Chapter 577. By the way, little brother, has the room card been returned? Muzi asked. This was the starting point of the conversation. It has been sent to the reclaim office. Sorry to trouble you this time. If it weren't for my urgent matter, I would have sent it over. Muzi's gaze suddenly softened. Everyone has times when it's inconvenient. Luaccio looked at a small black spot on the sea. It was probably a small island or something like that. By the way, you look like you were still a student, right? Did you come here with your girlfriend during the Golden Week? She seemed to be a very talkative lady, and the topic unconsciously revolved around Luaccio. But surprisingly, some of Ms. Muzi's questions did not cause any negative emotions. Perhaps it was because of her affinity as a woman, or perhaps it was because of her skills as a social person. When the topic was opened, Ms. Muzi would also talk about her own things. If you have a chance, you should really go to the Tibetan Plateau to have a look. If you like traveling, I would recommend it. If I have a chance. Luaccio nodded with a smile. Ms. Muzi intertwined her fingers and stretched comfortably against the sea breeze. She seemed to be very satisfied with the delicate sea breeze here. She sighed and said, well, I have rested enough. Little brother, I have a good time chatting with you. I thought there would be a generation gap since you were so young. Luaccio thought for a while and said, the generation gap is probably formed because there is a debate. It is good to talk about something else. People of different ages can always find common ground. Ms. Muzi was startled and subconsciously said, however, people can't just talk about things that they like when they are in a relationship. After a long time, there will inevitably be friction. After all, creatures like humans are independent, irreproducible, and complex individuals. If you only have simple contact with people, it may be difficult to find intimate friends. Thank you for your guidance. Luaccio nodded. Ms. Muzi suddenly opened her handbag. Little brother, take it as a thank you gift for helping me send the room card. I bought this when I traveled to the plateau before the new year. I hope it can bring you luck. A small chain of wooden beads. Luaccio curiously took them and saw that each bead was engraved with a Sanskrit word. Each bead was different. Although it looked rough at first glance, it seemed to have an indescribable sense of delicacy upon closer inspection. The body is like colored glass, clear inside and out, Madame Muzi said softly. The words on the bead are translated. I hope you can be a worry-free person. This is too valuable. Luaccio shook his head and planned to return the bracelet. Madame Muzi smiled. It's fate that brought us together. Although I'm not a Buddhist, I quite like this saying. If I can give you a little kindness, and you can share my kindness with others, life will be better. As she spoke, Madame Muzi stood up and gently patted Luaccio's shoulder. Then, she looked at Yu Yi, who was beside Luaccio, and smiled. Of course, treat the people around you well. This Madame Muzi is very cultured. The servant girl rarely praised others. The body is like colored glass, clear inside and out. Luaccio played with the wooden bead bracelet in his hand and suddenly smiled. It seems that this sea trip was really good. Master, this bracelet seems to be attached with a very weak spiritual power. It's a very gentle power. Yu Yi expressed her opinion. If ordinary people wear it, they will probably feel more refreshed, and there won't be any adverse reactions. It's probably consecrated by an eminent monk. Luaccio looked at Yu Yi. Although I haven't been there, I heard that this kind of small thing consecrated by eminent monks is very popular in the plateau. But it's not easy to find one that can be consecrated. Saying this, the shop owner directly put the bracelet on his wrist. His senses were much stronger than that of ordinary people. The weak energy on the bracelet instantly emitted a sense of calmness, which was easily captured by him. Muzi, Li. Luaccio smiled slightly and continued to look at the black spot on the sea that was gradually approaching. The tourist brochure placed next to him introduced that this was a small island called High Bay. The friction between the lid and the stainless steel wine jug made a metal scraping sound. The old captain had drunk almost half of the vodka inside and felt a warmth in his body. Standing on the deck on the second floor, the old captain looked at the people below. He often watched the tourists on the deck here for dozens of minutes. However, this time was probably the coldest he had seen in the hot Golden Week in the past 10 years. There was almost no one. There was only a man and a woman who looked like a young couple sitting on the bench on the deck, silently overlooking the sea. It had been a while. The old captain naturally recognized this young couple. This was the young man and woman who traveled with Officer Ma. Silently accompanied. The old captain's eyes suddenly became cloudy, as if he was reminiscing about something. He took another sip of liquor and took out the pocket watch he carried with him. There were footsteps behind the old captain. It was the sound of leather shoes hitting the deck. He hardly needed to look back to know who the person was because this was the person he had an appointment with. "Dad, are you looking for me?" The person who came was Mu Qinghai, the deputy captain. The old captain shook the wine bottle in his hand at this time and suddenly sent it to Mu Qinghai. Mu Qinghai was taken aback and frowned. "Dad, are you drinking again? There's not much left." Mu Enli shook his head and suddenly said, "You drink too? We haven't drunk together for a long time." "I don't drink during work hours." Mu Qinghai still shook his head. Mu Enli said, "People like us who have been on the ship all our lives, without alcohol, it is equivalent to losing half of our lives. Why don't you understand?" Mu Qinghai still shook his head. "If you drink, you can find a place to drink when you get ashore. As the deputy captain of a ship, I will not touch alcohol on the ship anyway." Mu Enli took a sip happily, turned around, and leaned against the railing. The wind almost blew off his hat, so he had to take it off. Mu Enli looked at the badge on the hat and said indifferently, "Everyone on the ship is afraid of me, but I can always find someone who is willing to drink with me. However, you can't find anyone. Whether it is at work or off work, everyone will only stay away from you. Do you know why?" Mu Qinghai said indifferently, "Work has a work system. If the crew has doubts about me, they can raise it with me. After discussion, if I am wrong, I will naturally change. As for staying away, I'm just strict with myself. If they are afraid of me, it proves that I have my own prestige on the ship." "Wrong." Mu Enli shook his head. "Wrong. It's not because you have prestige, but because you don't know how to drink. You don't understand that the most important thing on this ship is not me or you, nor the manager, but every sailor on the ship." "Dad, what era is it?" "The sailor's way of life is outdated." Mu Qinghai argued. "Maybe you can deepen the feelings between you and the crew, but it doesn't improve work efficiency at all. The change rate of the staff on the ship is very big every year. If you want to cultivate feelings one by one, it is too time-consuming. Besides, they're just staff on the ship, not sailors." Mu Qinghai seemed to feel that his words were a bit too much. He took a deep breath, and his tone slowed down. "Dad, when we return this time, you will retire. Now that I've retired, I'll enjoy my life and don't worry about anything else. In the future, I'll do better. So, leave everything in the future to me. Don't worry about it anymore." Mu Enli was silent for a while, and suddenly asked, "Qinghai, did you really stay in the central control room all the time last night and never left? Except for walking away when the power went out?" "No." Mu Qinghai's face didn't change, and then asked, "Why do you ask?" "No." Mu Enli shook his head. "Nothing, that's it. We will arrive at High Bay Island soon. Go and prepare. See how many tourists are willing to get off the ship to sightsee." "Okay." Mu Qinghai nodded, then turned and left. After the old captain stayed here for a while, he planned to leave. Before leaving, the old captain glanced at the young couple sitting on the deck and looking at the sea and whispered, "If we can stay together for a long time, it's good. It's good." Chapter 578. Who are the two women in the video? Outside the monitoring room, a crew member walked over while drinking coffee and asked the crew member standing outside the door who was originally in charge of complex monitoring. "Probably they are also policemen." The crew member shrugged and said, "Anyway, they are with the Officer Ma. They said that they wanted to see the surveillance video again, so I let them see it." "Don't we need to tell the captain?" The crew member with the coffee asked curiously. "Anyway, the police have to go back and forth several times to collect evidence. When we see the captain or the deputy captain, we can tell them. It's up to you." The crew member with the coffee smiled and said, "I'm getting off work. I'll change my clothes and go to the island." "Go ahead. I guess I won't get off work when you all come back." The crew member yawned. "I'll go and get a cup of coffee." In the monitoring room, Run Xiling and Li Zi were watching the video of a certain place attentively. Everything else was put aside. The scene of the murder, the corridor where the victim, Qian Guoyang, walked. Run Xiling had rewound and fast-forwarded it several times. Sure enough, Run Xiling adjusted the time axis of the video to about 3 o'clock last night. It's here. Li Zi, do you see it? Li Zi nodded and said, Sister Ren, this picture is jammed. If you slow it down like this, it will be more obvious. Then Run Xiling fast-forwarded it again to 6 o'clock in the morning, and then said, it's also jammed here. 6 o'clock is the time to change shifts. Go and look at the video of other places at 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Run Xiling frowned and ordered it this time. Soon after, Li Zi turned back and said, Sister Ren, all the videos of this time period are really jammed. Run Xiling sat down at this time, looking at the ceiling with her hands behind her head, and thought, when Qian Guoyang died, it should be about 8:45 in the morning. The power went out at 4 o'clock. Sister Ren, why is this jamming? Li Zi asked puzzledly. Run Xiling said, if it's just a picture, it might be a problem with the machine. But if all of them are like this, then I'm afraid that someone has covered up the video of this time period and used old videos or something. Why are you so sure? Li Zi asked curiously. Must it be to cover this section with something else? Run Xiling began to twist the time axis and arrived at about 5 o'clock in the morning. The scene she chose was the corridor where they were staying this time. Run Xiling said, while fast-forwarding, see, I'm not here at all, which proves that this image is fake. But weren't you sleeping at that time? How could you be in the corridor? Run Xiling blinked and said, the soundproofing conditions in the room are too good. I couldn't hear anything. I just got up and went to the bathroom, so I came out and listened to the situation. In the end, my brat's room was extremely quiet. Instead, it was old Ma's room that was so noisy that it was like a demolition. Damn, this old thing actually has such a fierce side to him. My God, that pill. It's really a good thing for this old guy. She really never gave up hope. However, no wonder Sister Ren was so angry with Sir Ma when she woke up this morning. Do you have any opinion? Run Xiling stared at Li Zi. Li Zi quickly shook her head and quickly changed the topic. Sister Ren, according to what you said, this video is really replaced. But who is it? Why is it replaced? Besides, why is there a video of the past? The replacement is from 3 to 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is the right time to change shifts, so the crew will ignore the things in the video or abnormal places when changing shifts. Run Xiling pondered. That is to say, the person who replaced the video is at least familiar with the crew's schedule, and there is a video of the past. Li Zi, go and ask the guy outside how often these surveillance videos are automatically cleaned. Is there a file before the cleaning? Generally, where the file is kept and who can get it. Oh, okay. Li Zi quickly said, it seems that we can't go down to the island below. Run Xiling snorted and said, it's not a real tourist area. It's just a small island on the sea. There are stones and woods on it. There is nothing there. What is there to visit? Seeing that Li Zi went out to ask something, Run Xiling began to mutter again, old Ma, you are really uncultured. You didn't even find the place where there was a lag. However, there was only that crew member in the monitoring room at that time, and Mu Qinghai who stayed behind. Will the replacement be one of them? No, there was a power outage in the middle. The power outage was probably to divert them. If there was about 10 minutes, it was not too late to change the video. Who is it? N? Run Xiling suddenly climbed on the monitor, pressed the buttons quickly, and looked at the picture on one of the screens. She was just curious because what she saw on the screen was the old captain, Mu Enli. He seemed to have just come out of his room, carrying a black handbag in his hand. This was actually nothing, but the old captain's action made sub-editor Ren feel a little uncomfortable. After the old captain on the screen came out of the room, he first looked around before locking the door and leaving normally. Why does it look like he is afraid of being discovered? Is it necessary? Run Xiling widened her eyes again. She saw that after the old captain disappeared from the camera, a figure suddenly passed by. Wearing a pink coat and sunglasses, she hurried past. Run Xiling subconsciously picked up the phone and called Ma Haud. Hello, old ma, where are you? The computer room, catching people. Fang probably doesn't dare to stay in a crowded place, so he must be hiding. What are you looking for me for? I'm busy. Old ma, let me ask you. Ren Xiling suddenly asked. The woman you chased out before, how tall do you think she is? How heavy is she? How tall? About 723 meters, right? I remember she is about the same height as me. Mahao thought and said she should be on the thin side. What about shoes? What do the shoes look like? Boots. I remember they are black boots, and there are star hanging buttons on the boots. Mahao frowned. Why are you asking these? Old ma, I think I found this woman. Ren Xiling said quickly. Hurry up. You guys go and follow the old captain. This woman seems to be following Mu Enli. In addition, I have some important discoveries. I will tell you later. You catch this woman first. Got it. Lin Feng, come with me. Ma Hao quickly hung up the phone. Officer Ma, why are you looking for me? Mu Enli frowned subconsciously after receiving a call from Ma Hao. Captain, where are you now? I plan to get off the ship for a walk. Mu Enli said calmly. Get off the ship? When did you get to the shore? Ma Hao asked in amazement. The old captain said calmly. It's not the shore. It's just an isolated island in the middle of the route. It's not big, about 1 kilometer. It's a scenic spot. Captain, the prisoner is still on the ship. How can you just let people get on the ship? If the prisoner takes the opportunity to leave, it won't work. Ma Hao suddenly objected. The old captain said, Officer Ma, there is nothing on this isolated island, not even a small boat. Where can the prisoner escape to? Can this person swim in the vast sea? Besides, we have registered all the people who get off the ship. When they get on the ship later, if anyone is missing, wouldn't it be better to lock onto the suspect? This makes sense, but you should slow down first. Even if you get off the ship, I want someone to follow you. Ma Hao said, my other batch of support will arrive in 30 minutes. How about you wait for another 30 minutes? Then, okay. Mu Enli nodded and did not mean to oppose Ma Hao. By the way, Officer Ma, why are you looking for me? Captain, listen to me now, but you can't show any surprised expression. Stay calm and listen while walking. Do you understand? Officer Ma then said quickly, I suspect that someone is following you. It may be a key figure in this case. Captain Mu Enli, I need you to do something for me. That is, bring the person who is following you to a narrower place. It's best if there is no way to escape. Do you understand? I understand. Mu Enli responded softly. He didn't even look behind him as he continued to walk forward. Then, he turned a corner and entered another corridor. Sister Rin, I got all. Li Zi walked quickly into the monitoring room and was about to speak. But at this time, the screen in the monitoring room turned black instantly. Not only that, but the lights here also dimmed. The two hurriedly walked out and saw that all the instruments in the entire monitoring room had stopped working. What the hell happened? Maybe there's a problem with the electric well. Let's go and see right away. Fang licked his lips. After cutting the last wire with the knife in his hand, he put it on another wire. There was a fierce spark at the junction of the wires, and then there was a burst of smoke. Hee. Now you can't catch me, right? It will take at least half a day to fix this place. UB*TCH, officer. If you have the ability, come and catch me and dry me in the sun. With that said, Fang quickly pulled the chain of his trench coat, put on a hat, lowered his head, and left the electric room before the crew arrived. Fang rubbed his palms, showing a hint of greed. He smirked and said, Then, it's time to go treasure hunting. Master, it seems that we can't get off the ship for the time being. We have to wait for 30 minutes. Just in front of the elevator to get off the ship, Yu Yi whispered in Luochio's ear. Not only the master and servant stayed here, but there were also tourists who planned to get off the ship. Of course, there were not as many as expected. At a glance, there were only about 100 people. It seems to be earlier than expected, Luochio suddenly said. Yu Yi, what do you think this proves? Master? Luochio chuckled and said, It proves that, as bystanders, it is great that we can be in this rotating world. A faint coolness suddenly flowed out of the wooden bead in his hand. Chapter 579. If there was anyone who was most familiar with Bayou cruise ship, it would naturally be the old captain who had worked on Bayou cruise ship for 30 years. The Walking Map. This was another title of the old captain among the crew. No one was more familiar with every place on this ship than the old captain. At this time, the old captain, who was carrying a black handbag, quietly walked into a spiral staircase. After opening the fire door, Mu Inley was about to go up, but he received another call at this time. The crew informed him that the electric room in the central control room was maliciously destroyed. Even the backup power was cut off. Now the entire control room was in a state of paralysis. The old captain frowned and still climbed up the spiral staircase. He even deliberately spoke a little louder on the phone. Don't worry. Find someone to repair the electric room immediately. It is now docked at High Bay Island. It will take some time. Take this time to see how far the repair can be done. I will come over and take a look soon. With that said, Mu Inley had walked to the end of the spiral staircase, opened the fire door here, and left. The moment the fire escape door closed, a motionless figure stuck to the wall at the bottom of the stairs began to move quickly. The action was extremely fast. The figure quietly opened the door and poked his head out to take a look. He saw that Mu Inley had walked a distance away and was about to disappear around the corner. The figure flashed out of the fire door without saying a word. At first, just as the figure was about to follow again, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Bang! That was the sound of the fire door being closed after being hit with a great force. The person who hit the door was Sir Ma. Mahoud was seen leaning against the door at this time. He sneered, "You can't get away this time. Who the hell are you, woman? Why are you eavesdropping on us?" This figure that came with the old captain. The woman quickly glanced at it, but stepped back step by step without saying a word. But just as she took a few steps back and turned to run, at the end of the corridor, Lin Feng had already rushed out in an instant. He opened his hands like a goalkeeper in a restricted area. The woman suddenly stopped. Mahoud and Lin Feng attacked from the front and back, gradually approaching the woman. "I want to arrest you now. You'd better cooperate." The woman suddenly smiled and unbuttoned her coat one by one in front of Mahoud, revealing a pair of rather strong balls. It was actually a low-cut dress. "Ew, what are you trying to do? I'm warning you. I won't accept this kind of behavior." Mahoud snorted angrily and pointed at him, but this woman only took off her coat. She then stretched out her hand toward Mahoud, her fingers curled back and forth, looking completely provocative. "Lin Feng, don't let this woman anger you. We are a team. Let's do it together." Sir Ma was smart enough not to be provoked by such a simple action. Without saying a word, the two police officers flew towards the woman one after the other. Obviously, Sir Ma, who had no martial arts background, used a move that no one knew where he learned from. It looked like a black tiger steals its heart. As for Officer Lin, who had graduated from school, he looked much more like a Sanda fighter. However, this woman easily dodged Mahoud's attack and pressed Sir Ma's head with one hand, forcing him to lower his head. After that, she lifted her back foot and gave a side kick to Lin Feng, who was behind her. This kick was extremely fierce. Lin Feng didn't have time to dodge and was hit by it. He was stunned and moved back a few steps. Following this spinning movement, the woman didn't stop moving. She turned her body and bent her long legs instantly, directly hooking Mahoud's neck with her legs. Damn it! Mahoud, who was good at shooting but not good at fighting, had become more and more swollen in recent years. At this time, he could only bend his waist and grab the woman's thighs with both hands. His action was quite funny. Lin Feng threw his numb arm and took a deep breath. After a few punches, he resumed his Sanda posture, indicating that he could still fight against 10 people. "Wow, Olma, you're so unlucky." Behind them, on the other side of the corridor, Ren Xiling and Lizzie ran over. Sub-editor Ron, who adhered to the principle of insulting each other, subconsciously didn't let go of the opportunity in front of her. "Damn it, come help me. I can't breathe," Mahoud shouted with a pale and painful face. Ren Xiling clenched her fists without saying anything and sneered, "I haven't fought for a long time since I turned over a new leaf. We're all women. I won't be merciful." "Lizzie, step back. I'm going to unlock the seal." "What seal did you have? Wasn't it because you smoked, drank, permed your hair, and sent a few boys to the hospital?" Lizzie stepped back silently with a face full of regret. At this time, this woman suddenly let go of Ma Howd and stepped back with a smile. She didn't seem to be afraid of being besieged by so many people. Sir Ma, who had recovered his breath, touched his neck, then shook the fat on his body and rushed to this woman again. After Run Xiling joined in the attack, a total of 3 people seemed to make this woman a little strenuous. Of course, it was just a little. She still calmly dealt with the attacks of the 3 people. Damn it, old Ma, don't block me. I almost kicked her. Damn it, if it weren't for you, I would have crushed her to death. Madam, don't kick randomly. I'm here. However, without any tacit understanding, the fighting strength of these 3 people plummeted not long after. The besieged woman suddenly saw an opportunity. She suddenly pressed her hands on Run Xiling's shoulder and jumped up. Unexpectedly, she flipped over in front of Rin Xiling and even kicked sub-editor Ren's back heavily at the moment of landing. Rin Xiling's body was suddenly kicked toward Ma Howd and Lin Feng. The 3 people suddenly fell to the ground. At this time, the woman turned around and suddenly waved her hand, then quickly retreated. She had broken the trap, and there was no way for her to retreat. This woman, who didn't say a word from beginning to end, turned around and ran away at a very fast speed. The 3 people who got up from the ground couldn't help but explode with anger when they saw that they couldn't catch up with her. Lizzie saw this scene, shook her head slightly, and sighed. Then she quietly blew out a breath. On the way the woman ran, a small ice ring was condensed from the ground, which happened to be on the woman's ankle and tripped her instantly. The woman seemed to have never thought that such a situation would happen. When she realized it, her body had fallen to the ground uncontrollably. Then, sub-editor Run, a ruthless person who would seek revenge, directly rushed up and pressed on the woman's body without saying anything. Lin Feng and Ma Howd also arrived later. The 3 of them fought hard and finally subdued the woman. Gotcha! The handcuffs were directly handcuffed on the woman's hand and then connected to Sir Ma's hand. Ma Howd snorted. Let's see where you can go this time. Stand up. Ma Howd raised her arm forcefully. The woman also stood up and looked at the floor of the corridor in confusion. But she saw nothing. Lizzie pretended to know nothing, walking over while eating a lollipop. Wow. Sister Rin, you are so awesome. Child's play. Rin Xiling rubbed her nose and said, Anyway, I am the existence of all the martial arts groups in the university. Lizzie clapped her hands. What else could she do? If I hadn't tripped, the 3 of you wouldn't have been able to catch me. The woman suddenly shook her head and said indifferently. Ma Hao didn't care and said with a righteous face, That's because justice had a long arm. Justice will prevail over evil. Those who do bad things will be punished by God. Whatever you say, I'll just consider myself unlucky. The woman shook her head, but suddenly smiled and said, But Ma Howd, are you on a diet? Your belly seems to have increased a lot. I don't need you to care. Wait, how do you know my name? Sir Ma was suddenly stunned. The woman looked at Rin Xiling and said, Xiling, good job. Your bones are still there. Not bad. Rin Xiling was stunned, and then she frowned. The more she frowned, the deeper she frowned. I seem to have heard this voice somewhere, and I don't know why I'm so angry when I hear it. Huh. The woman took off the sunglasses on her face and grabbed her hair at the same time. It was actually a wig. She then touched her face and tore off 2 layers of skin from both sides of her cheeks. She sighed and said, Phew, I feel much better now. Long time no see, old Ma, Xiling. And this, I don't know her. Is she new here? Lin Feng looked at Sir Ma and Rin Xiling in astonishment, but saw their expressions were as colorful as a rainbow. Ali! Rin Xiling and Ma Howd exclaimed at the same time. The woman called Ali was now communicating with Sir Ma. Lizzie whispered to Rin Xiling, Sister Run, who is this Ali? Why you keep staring at her, as if you want to eat her? Rin Xiling squinted her eyes. She used to be in the same team as old Ma. Later, she was transferred to another team. I don't know where she went, and I didn't expect that she would show up again. However, this damn woman is a damn slut. She seduces other people's husbands. Seduce what? Lizzie was stunned. Rin Xiling pointed at herself and said, Seduce my husband. Then wasn't that Luacio's father? Xiling, are you speaking ill of me again? Ali looked at her with a smile. She was very intellectual, just like a mature elder sister. How could it be? Sub-editor Ren was also full of joy. She walked forward. I'm so happy to see Sister Ali. Sister Ali, I haven't seen you for several years. You have more wrinkles. You need to take care of yourself. At your age, if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to get married. Haha. Really? Seriously, Ziling, you too. Look at how flabby your face is. You shouldn't stay up all night, right? Thank you for your concern. Sister Ali, look at your face. Is it too hard? Look, your breasts are so small that they can't be seen. Yes, it's a little hard. Unlike you, your breasts are so big that they can't hold up. Are they sagging? Thank you for your concern. Me too. Thank you for your concern. Officer Ma swallowed his saliva and broke out in cold sweat as he looked at the two men who were so close to each other that there seemed to be lightning flashing between their eyes. Sir Ma? Lin Feng asked in a low voice. Quick, find a topic. Once these two women start fighting, it's going to be a disaster. Ma Hao quickly pushed Lin Feng away. So why me? Lin Feng could only sigh. Then he felt an inexplicable pressure, stiffening his body. He said, Speaking of which, Miss Ali, why are you here? And why are you tailing the captain? And why are you even bugging the place where we eat? Can you explain? Xiling, let's talk another day. After all, business is more important. Of course, I'm a sensible person. Why would I care? But Xiling, it's not convenient for you to listen to what I'm going to say next. Can you avoid arousing suspicion? Ali said with a smile. Ren Xiling pulled Lizzie to the side and leaned against the wall. She looked like she was mumbling. State security. Ma Hao opened her eyes wide and looked at the small notebook Ali took out. She couldn't believe it, but then she realized, so it's this department. I was wondering, when you were transferred, you didn't say where you were going. I asked around for a long time, but I couldn't find anything. Old Ma, I can't hide it from you. Ali shook her head and said seriously, but even if you know, you can only pretend that you didn't see me after you get off the ship. Do you understand? And this newbie. Ma Hao nodded seriously. As for Lin Feng immediately covered his ears and said, Well, how about I go there too? He looked at the place where Ren Xiling was. No, I will temporarily requisition the two of you. Ali said seriously. Ma Hao, Lin Feng, I received information that there are foreign agents on this Bayou cruise ship. They are planning an activity that is unfavorable to our country. Now I want to officially requisition you to help me solve this incident. I promise to obey the organization's orders. Sir Ma suddenly straightened his back and raised his hand to salute. Well, have you found the agent? You followed the captain. Is he? Ali frowned and said, I'm not sure, but this matter is more complicated. In fact, I have found one of the agents and followed him all the way here. But I didn't expect him to be dead. Could it be Qin Guoyang? Ma Hao was shocked. Chapter 580. No wonder we found that this Qin Guoyang is still alive, but this dead one became a person with no identity. After listening to Ali's words, Sir Ma suddenly realized. For an agent, stealing or forging an identity was the most normal thing. But this Qin Guoyang has died on the ship. Lin Feng frowned at this time. So, it may be this mysterious agent, codenamed King, who did it? But since they were going to contact each other, why did King kill Qin Guoyang? Ma Hao said, Let's go back to the captain. Ali, why did you follow Muenli? Ali said seriously, Since I boarded the ship, I have been secretly observing this Qin Guoyang. I found that he had 2 contacts with Muenli. The first time was when they just boarded the ship. There was a brief contact between them on the deck. At that time, Qin Guoyang seemed to be looking for something on the deck that tourists were not allowed to enter. Later, he was reprimanded by the captain. Ali recalled, I didn't feel suspicious at the time, but later I found that Qin Guoyang contacted the captain again in a Japanese restaurant on the ship. At that time, they also had a brief conversation. At that time, the captain's expression was obviously not right. About what time? Asked Ma Hao. After the ship set sail, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Ali said, Later, Qin Guoyang and Fei Ying contacted each other. The distance was too far. I couldn't hear what they said. I just knew that Fei Ying and Qian Guoyang went back to the room together. Soon after, Qian Guoyang came out again. I followed him quietly, but this time he seemed to find that someone was following him. Ollie sighed and shook her head. Obviously, I was shaken off by him. I had no choice but to stay near his room temporarily to see if he would come back. I didn't expect Qian Guoyang to die on the deck the next day. Ma Haod frowned. You said that the captain and Qian Guoyang had 2 contacts, but it's weird. When Qian Guoyang was found on the deck, I remember that Mu Enli did not say that he had seen this person. He concealed this. This captain seems to be getting better and better. That's right, Xiling. Didn't you say you found something? What is it? Sir Ma shouted at Ren Xiling. Annie Ren stared at Ali unhappily as she walked over, but she still said sternly, Old Ma, the surveillance room's video that you saw before was tampered with by someone. The video from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. last night was all replaced. I'm guessing that the replaced video should be from the past. That's why you couldn't find anything useful when you looked at it. What? Ma Haod was stunned. Are you sure? I'm also a professional reporter. Can't I see this kind of video? Ren Xiling shook her head. If you don't believe me, you can ask Xiao Bao to do an identification. No need, I believe you. Ali said directly. Xiling, who is a way to replace these videos? Ren Xiling still looked unhappy, but she still said, anyone who can get close to the surveillance room can do it. The problem is who can get the old data video. I have asked. The video of this surveillance system will be automatically cleaned once every 7 days, but I have compared the videos of the previous 7 days and did not find a similar one. That is to say, this is the video from 7 days ago. Although it will be automatically cleaned once every 7 days, this ship will always download and save the data after cleaning. Only 2 people have the key to the reference room. Captain, Ali's eyes narrowed. Ren Xiling nodded and then said, there's also the deputy captain, Mu Qinghai. He also has the key. Ma Haod said, I asked about the situation at the time. There was another crew member on duty last night. If he was there all the time, Mu Qinghai should not have a chance to make a move. But there was a power outage for more than 10 minutes last night. If they were not there for more than 10 minutes, is it possible to replace the data in such a short time? If the replacement person brings the backup power to start the surveillance system, I have seen this system. It should be about 7 or 8 minutes. Ren Xiling said. Ma Haod frowned and picked up the phone. After a while, he said with a solemn expression, Mu Enli's phone is turned off. Lin Feng's phone also rang at the same time. After listening, he also frowned and said, Sir Ma, our support has arrived. However, there is a power outage in the central control room. They did not receive any signal guidance. Now they plan to land by force. In addition, the tourists have begun to disembark and land on the island. Didn't I say, wait for my consent? Ma Haod stomped his foot. Find him. Find this captain for me first. You must find him. Click, the slight sound of the lock spring turning. So the door lock was opened so easily. Of course, the room card was used, but it was the backup room card. The person who successfully opened the door took a deep breath at this time and gently pushed the door open. This was the door of the captain's lounge. The person who opened the door looked around and found that no one was around. Then, he quickly entered the captain's bedroom. He was still careful. Even the action of closing the door was gentle. After the door was closed, he walked through the short aisle of the room and really walked into the bedroom. He began to look at everything here carefully. He was so focused that he even ignored the door lock behind him at this time. It was making a very slight sound. The person who opened the door frowned and looked around. The bedroom didn't seem to be anything special. So he began to move the cabinets in the room, or the hanging paintings on the walls of the room. He even began to gently knock on the walls of the bedroom, then the ceiling, but he still found nothing. He was unwilling to give up. He continued to turn his gaze to the floor. He intended to lift the carpet pressed by the big bed. But at this time, he carefully found that there seemed to be traces of movement between the foot of the bed and the carpet. The indentation at the foot of the bed. There was an asymmetrical place. This bed seemed to have been moved. Yeah, It seems that you found something incredible. But at this moment, a man's figure suddenly came from behind. The person who opened the door turned around abruptly and saw a man wearing a straw hat and flip-flops leaning against the TV cabinet at this time. The man even picked up an apple from the fruit platter and took a bite. Flying Eagle. Fei Ying blinked at this time and said, "Hello. Who are you? Do you know where you broke in? You can break in, but I can't. Isn't this double standard too awesome?" Fei Ying took another bite of the apple and smiled. "Oh, I remember. You must be saying that it's normal for you to come in, right? Because I'm a stranger, but you're the son, the captain's son? Am I right, Deputy Captain?" Deputy Captain Mu Qinghai. At this time, Mu Qinghai stared sharply at Fei Ying, this guy of unknown origin. He said in a deep voice, "I don't care who you are, but this is a private place. If you don't leave, I will call the security guards to arrest you." Fei Ying smiled and said, "I say, brother, don't be so serious. Everyone knows that maybe you're not a good thing. Why do you have to fall out with me? Why don't we divide the things we find here, and then no one knows each other? I will disappear automatically and never appear in front of you for a lifetime." "Humph, I don't know what you're talking about." Mu Qinghai sneered. "I just came to get medicine for the captain." "Then what's in your bag?" Fei Ying said coldly. Mu Qinghai subconsciously grabbed the bag on his left. At this time, Fei Ying suddenly threw the apple in his hand and smashed it directly on Mu Qinghai's face. He took advantage of Mu Qinghai's body, twisted Mu Qinghai's arm with one hand, and then reached in with the other hand. He took out the things in his pocket with a fluid movement, and then quickly stepped back 2 steps. Fei Ying unfolded the thing in front of Mu Qinghai. "I say, brother, you can't say that you picked up this protractor on the ground, right? By the way, where's the design drawing? That's also a relic of my old man. You have to return it to me, right?" Mu Qinghai frowned, rubbing his arm while sitting on the bed. He suddenly fell silent. Fei Ying was also very patient. He picked up another apple on the fruit plate and ate it. "Damn, I can finally eat." "I say, brother, have you thought about it?" After Fei Ying gnawed an apple, he smiled and said, "My patience is very good, but there is also a limit. As for this protractor, how did you get it? I'm not interested. I'm just interested in what's hidden in this room. In addition, I'm a pacifist. I will never use violence when I can. So cooperation is the best." Mu Qinghai squinted and looked at Fei Ying. "Why should I believe you?" Fei Ying shrugged and said, "You have no choice, right? Whether I can believe it or not, that's definitely metaphysics. But the question is, do you have any other choice but to believe it now? Will you really disappear after getting the things inside?" Mu Qinghai asked again. Fei Ying said seriously, "Brother, as the saying goes, even thieves have morals. I'm a gentleman with taste and integrity. I only steal things and never participate in other things." But as soon as Fei Ying finished speaking, he frowned and subconsciously looked at the bedroom door. He heard footsteps outside the room, and it seemed that there was more than one person. "Brother, you seem to be playing tricks?" Fei Ying's gaze condensed. Mu Qinghai said calmly, "The captain is not in good health. I installed a pager in his room. Right here." Mu Qinghai pointed to the place where he was sitting. After taking away the pillow, there was a small pager. "Once it's pressed, someone will come." Captain, are you all right?" The door opened at this time, and 2 security guards on the ship crashed in at the same time. But the scene they saw made the 2 security guards stunned. Mu Qinghai shouted at this time, "Catch this guy. He broke in and wants to steal something." One was the deputy captain, and the other was a guy of unknown origin. The 2 security guards on the ship almost didn't have to think about it. They immediately walked towards Fei Ying. They just directly confronted him. "Damn, I met another bitch. The city's tricks are deep." Fei Ying muttered, but he calmly took out a finger-long strip from the bag and waved it in front of Mu Qinghai. "I just had a recording, brother." Mu Qinghai's face changed slightly, and he suddenly reached out and pointed. "Catch him. Bring that recording pen over. This is the company's secret." "Got it, Deputy Captain." The 2 rushed over at the same time. Fei Ying gave a strange laugh, and he nimbly passed through the middle of the 2 security guards. "Huh, I'm not going to play with you. Brother, you set me up, so don't blame me." Fei Ying rushed out of the door in an instant. Mu Qinghai said angrily, "Call all the security guards and crew on the ship. We must catch this thief. Don't let him escape." "Got it." Seeing the two security guards running out in a hurry, Mu Qinghai frowned and glanced at the position under the bed. He hesitated for a moment and decided to push the bed away slightly. But when he pushed it away, he saw a small keyhole on the wall blocked by the foot of the bed. Mu Qinghai suddenly punched the wall. It was the pain in his hand. Mu Qinghai's hair was a little messy. He shifted his gaze and looked at the clothes rack next to him. He suddenly got up and picked up the clothes rack, preparing to smash it against the wall. But the phone rang at this time. "Deputy Captain, the officer Ma is looking for you, asking you to meet him as soon as possible." "Got it. I'll be there later." Mu Qinghai responded calmly. But after putting down the phone, he still smashed the clothes rack against the wall. But until the clothes rack was smashed into pieces, he could only peel off a layer of the wallpaper on the wall. Mu Qinghai looked at a steel plate exposed after the wallpaper peeled off, and he suddenly sat on the bed dejectedly. After a while, Mu Qinghai moved the bed back and covered the peeled-off place. Then he tidied up his appearance. Finally, he cleaned up the wreckage of the clothes rack, packed it up, and left the room with it. This tree has been around for some years. On an isolated island in the sea, in the woodland in the center of the island, the servant girl reached out and touched the ancient tree trunk. She smiled slightly and said, "The environment overseas is good. This tree will probably give birth to a tree spirit after 100 years. "You don't move," Luochio suddenly said softly. The servant girl maintained the action of raising her hand to touch the branch and turned her head gracefully. The boss took out his beloved Hasselblad camera at this time and began to fiddle with the focus. The master and servant of the club seemed to be no different from the tourists who were playing on the beach. After leaving a silhouette, Boss Luo seemed to be very satisfied. At this time, he put down the camera. At this time, someone passed through the heavy shadows of the trees and came to this place. Luochio looked up and smiled slightly. "Captain, you are here too. It's you guys?" Mu Enli stopped and frowned slightly. He didn't seem to expect to meet these two people here. But seeing that this young couple was clearly taking photos here, Mu Enli said, "There is actually nothing to look at here. There are some good-looking reefs on the beach over there, and there is a cliff. It will be better if you take photos of the scenery." "Is the captain planning to go there?" Luochio asked softly. Mu Enli shook his head. "Nothing, I just want to walk around. Then I won't bother you." Luochio smiled slightly, then glanced at Yu Yi. The servant girl came to the boss's side and accompanied him out of the forest. Seeing this, Mu Enli quickly walked into the depths of the forest. On the beach, the servant girl took off her shoes and walked barefoot on the fine sand. The seawater washed on this pair of white feet, while Luochio sat in a place where the seawater couldn't reach, looking up at the blue sky. "Luochio! Luochio!" Not far away, Lin Feng, Ren Xiling, and Li Zi ran over quickly. Ren Xiling looked at these two leisurely people and gasped. "You are here. When did you get off the ship? Did you hunt?" "No, have you seen Captain?" "Captain?" Boss Luo raised his head and asked. Lin Feng nodded and asked, "We have something to look for him. I just heard from the tourists over there that they seem to see him coming here. Have you been here all the time? Did you see him? He should have gone that way, right?" Luochio smiled and pointed to the reef and cliff in the distance. "The cliff. Okay, I got it." Lin Feng nodded and ran in that direction without saying a word. Ren Xiling and Li Zi also followed. But after a few steps, Auntie Ren ran back from the back and whispered in Boss Luo's ear, "Kid, you'd better get on the ship immediately, then hide in the room. Don't go anywhere. Don't open the door for strangers. Remember, except for me, no one is allowed to open the door, especially women of unknown origin. You'd better have sex with Yu Yi." Omitting the last sentence, Luochio said indifferently, "Unknown origin? Just listen to me," Ren Xiling said and chased after Lin Feng. Watching this group of people running away and leaving a long trail of footprints on the beach, Luochio played with the bracelet on his hand and smiled slightly. At this time, the servant girl picked up a shell from the beach and put it in her ear to listen. Luochio asked, "Is it nice?" Chapter 581. It was very quiet here, deep in the forest of the small island. Tourists on the passing route would not go deep into such a place. On the one hand, it was because the old trees were entangled, and it was not easy to walk in places with snakes, insects, rats, and ants. On the other hand, there were forests everywhere. If tourists wanted to take photos, there were many choices on the land. It was not worthwhile to come to such an isolated island. Mu Inley came under the soil slope where a big tree was rooted and began to tear off the vines entangled here. The old captain suddenly felt a little grateful. If it was a day ago, with his physical condition, he would probably fall ill in a few minutes if he wanted to do such physical labor. But his physical strength was very good at this moment, really good. After tearing off the vines, Mu Inley began to use the branches he picked up on the road to dig the soil in a place under the soil slope. Soon after, a hole that could be entered by people was exposed here. The old captain took out a small, strong flashlight from his clothes, bent down, and walked into the cave. It seemed to be deeper than expected, and it was slanted downward. The underground cave that did not see the sun all year round was very humid, and some places even dripped with water. The clothes on Mu Inley's shoulders were already wet. After about 10 meters, it suddenly became clear, but they had reached the end. Some simple wood could be seen here. A simple frame was nailed with iron nails to support the soil above. Mu Inley came to the center of the frame silently and sat down silently. He took out a white candle from his handbag and took out a pack of cigarettes from his clothes. The lighter lit the cigarette first. After the old captain took a long puff, like a blower, he lit the candle. The smoke from the burning candle and the smoke from the burning cigarette were entangled together, making the place a little hazy. At this time, the old captain smiled slightly and lowered his eyes, revealing a trace of tenderness. He looked at the place a little in front of where he was sitting. A few simple and crude small stones surrounded a larger stone, standing upright. This was an extremely simple tomb. "Are you okay? I'm here to see you again." He became even more gentle. He reached out his hand and gently stroked the largest rock. He said softly, "It's been another year. The days don't seem to pass quickly, but they aren't slow either." The old captain smiled again. This time, he took out his steel flask and unscrewed the lid. He poured some wine in front of the stone and took a sip himself. "The doctor told me not to drink, but it's fine today." He quietly savored the wine in the pot like an old drinker. However, the wine inside wasn't actually any expensive wine. It was just the kind of inferior stuff that could be bought casually. When Mu Inley was used to something, he usually didn't change it. For example, the soft pack of cigarettes he carried with him. In the past, he only sold it for 5 cents a pack. Now, he could sell it for 5 yuan a pack. However, he had been smoking for decades. Fortunately, the packaging of the cigarettes had not been changed. Otherwise, he might have felt uncomfortable. The old captain looked at the straight candle flame wick in the windless state. His eyes drooped a little, and he suddenly whispered, "By the way, next year I shouldn't be able to come." As he spoke, he took out some paper money from the black handbag, grabbed a small handful, lit it with a candle, and then scattered it in front of the tombstone. The old captain shook his head. "In fact, I have thought about it. After retirement, I will quietly come to this island and build a wooden house outside to live." "When will I live?" "Maybe when there is a storm at sea, or when the sun is shining. When I feel that it's about time, I will come here and lie down. However, time doesn't wait for me." For a long time, the cigarette was gone, the wine was finished, and the paper money he brought had all turned into gray embers. As for the candles, they were already half burnt. Mu Inley breathed a sigh of relief and stood up. "If possible, I want to lie down here today. But I'm sorry, there's still some things outside that I need to deal with. Bayou cruise ship has been with me for 30 years. I have to let it go back safely. You won't blame me, right?" Mu Inley silently stood next to the simple cemetery, digging the soil here with both hands. An item wrapped in canvas, the size of 2 palms, was dug out from the deep burial. The old captain put it in his handbag and looked at the tombstone in a daze. His gaze changed from tenderness to relief. It's good to be able to catch up with your death anniversary on the last voyage. He picked up the bag and blew out the candles here. In fact, there were many candles here. Some were almost burnt out, barely leaving a small piece. Some had half of it left, and some had less than a third left. In fact, Mu Inley did not dare to wait for all the candles to burn out every time, because there was an old saying that the wax torch would only dry up when it turned to ashes. If there was still some left, it might mean that it was not extinguished. If it was not extinguished, he would not be extinguished, and he could stay here for a long time. He pushed aside the branches in front of him, and the golden and flat beach was right in front of him. The old captain stretched out his hand to block the sun above his head and walked out. He could still see some tourists frolicking on the beach, but there were fewer people. Some had probably gone back. Mu Inley glanced and found that the young couple had not yet boarded the ship, but stayed on the beach not far from Bayou Cruise ship. The old captain thought for a while and walked towards the young couple. He got closer. The beautiful girl was sitting on the sand at this time, with her head lowered. She was holding a string of small shells that were almost strung together in her hand, and there were some beside her. The boy was beside her, looking sideways. This is the red peony treasure snail, right? The old captain came to the side of the two, squatted down, and looked at the girl, the servant girl's shell necklace. Yi looked up and smiled slightly. Well, I was lucky. I accidentally picked it up. Does the captain recognize it? The old captain smiled and said, for people like us who have been dealing with the sea all our lives, we can always name a few kinds. But it's the first time I have seen such a small one. However, you can also pick up the red peony treasure snail by accident. Your luck is really good. Thank you. Yi nodded with a smile, then lowered her head and continued to focus on knitting. The old captain then looked at Luaccio and said, have you been to the cliff over there to take photos? Not yet. Luaccio shook his head and said casually, it feels good to stay here. It's a pity that we can't wait until sunset. Otherwise, it will be more beautiful. The old captain grabbed a handful of fine sand and let it slip through his fingers. He nodded and said, that's right. It's almost time to board the ship. Captain, have you finished what you want to do? Luaccio asked softly. Mu Inley was startled. He wanted to speak, but he had a puzzled expression. Luaccio said, nothing. I just feel that walking into this desolate forest is probably something I want to do. That's right. Normal people won't go in. The old captain nodded with a smile, then shook his head, but did not speak. He patted the fine sand wrapped around his hands, pressed the captain's hat on his head, and stood up. He looked at the two and said, the wind will be stronger later. If there's nothing else, let's go back. Boss Luo nodded gently and looked at Mu Inley's footprints, which also left a long and straight line on the beach. The shells were strung into a necklace by the skillful maid. He wondered if anyone could string the old captain's footprints together. But when the tide rises, the sea will rush up, and it will probably disappear. Master, it has been strung together. Thank you for your hard work. The sea level was calm, and the huge cruise ship was naturally as steady as Mount Tai, motionless. But on Bayou Cruise, it was not so calm. For example, in a small theater built in Bayou Cruise's entertainment area, the actors who were performing exotic stage plays were suffering from the worst thing ever. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a man wearing a straw hat and flip-flops suddenly broke into the center of the stage and then grabbed an actress. To be more precise, he just pressed on the actress's shoulders and hid behind her. The actress, of course, screamed and panicked, because in addition to this man, 5 staff members of the ship rushed into the stage. 3 security guards and 2 crew members. As for under the stage, many security guards and crew members emerged one after another. Catch him. Don't let him run away. Fei smiled and pressed on the actress's shoulders, swaying left and right as a shield, blocking the security guards and crew members who wanted to pounce on him. But he didn't plan to stay here for too long. He suddenly reached out and pulled out the skirt of the actress. This kind of apron-like skirt was too easy to pull off. The actress, who was in good health, screamed in horror at this time, but she was pushed out by Fei Ying and slammed into the crowd. Fei Ying raised the skirt he took off in his hand at this time and laughed. Grandpa, it's original. Who wants it? There seemed to be more people who knew the business than Fei Ying imagined. Fei Ying suddenly jumped down from the stage and stepped on the shoulder of a security guard. He borrowed the force to jump again and jumped into the audience. He threw the original inner skirt in his hand. Several men stood up subconsciously and wanted to grab it. Fei Ying laughed again, and he was as happy as he could be. He stepped on the chair and ran agilely toward the security door behind the small theater. In fact, similar situations had happened many times. Looking at the ashen faces of the security guards and crew members, one would know how miserable they were all along the way. It was like being treated as a monkey and played again and again. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Fei Ying pulled a handbag with a long chain from a lady in the last row of the auditorium and rushed out of the door directly. Finally, he wrapped the chain of the bag around the door handle several times and fixed it. He clapped his hands and was ready to leave proudly. But as soon as he turned around, his face changed slightly. Ah, isn't this Sir Mahoud? Long time no see. Fei Ying, you can't escape this time. Mahoud glared at this guy. He was full of confidence. Fei Ying glanced at him. In addition to Mahoud, there was still a woman standing next to the fat police officer. She was about 30 years old, but she was very charming. She was not comparable to those 20-year-old internet celebrities who only knew how to make up. Ollie, sir, with just you and this good-looking big sister? Fei Ying shrugged. I'm afraid you can't catch her even if I let you use one hand. Oh, are you looking down on women? Ollie narrowed her eyes. Fei Ying patted his heart and said with a scared face, of course not. But my principle is that beautiful women are used to be loved. Good-looking big sister, I hurt you. You're a playboy. Ollie shook her head, lowered her hands, and walked up slowly. But unfortunately, I don't like frivolous people. I'm heavy where I should be, big sister. Fei Ying smiled and spread out his hands. He suddenly squatted down. He just dodged Ali's violent sidekick. Fei Ying pressed his hat and took 2 steps back. Big sister, let's talk about love. I don't fight with women, but I like to fight with men. Ali smiled, and her palms suddenly touched her waist. Hearing a loud noise, Fei Ying looked at his feet in a cold sweat. There was a small hole that was still emitting smoke. Fei Ying felt cold all over. He instinctively raised his hand and looked at the black pistol in Ali's hand. He swallowed his saliva. Big sister, isn't this too much of foul? Are you leaving or not? Ali shrugged. Fei Ying smiled embarrassedly and looked around. But at this moment, another gunshot sounded. The bullet probably passed through his hat. Fei Ying swallowed his saliva and stuttered, No, let's go, Katja. There were 2 consecutive sounds of handcuffs being handcuffed. This time, Fei Ying's hands were handcuffed behind his back, and there was even a rope wrapped around his neck. The knot was a slip knot, but it would tighten when pulled. The other end of the rope was tied to Sir Ma's wrist. Sir, you don't have to play so hard. I said I'm not leaving. Oof. I said, I'll definitely make you a salted fish. Fei Ying shrugged at this time. Sir, I've learned for the painful experience. I've decided to cooperate with the police. I want to be a tainted witness. I want to report. I know who killed Qian Guoyang. Sir Ma and Ali looked at each other. Mahoud frowned and said, Do you really know? Fei Ying raised his eyebrows proudly, and then said with a smile, But I'll only tell this to this big sister. Sir, you should avoid it. You dare play tricks? Mahoud grabbed Fei Ying's collar with both hands. I'm warning you. I won't do anything like beating my chest with a phone book. Fei Ying said calmly, Sir, this is my condition. You can't not accept it. It's up to you. Anyway, I can endure it. But I have to remind you that the murderer may have begun to find a way to escape. The longer you torture me, don't blame me if he leaves. You brat. Old Ma, let me do it. You wait first. Ali patted Mahoud's shoulder at this time and took the rope from his hand. Seeing this, Mahoud had to walk to the side helplessly, but he stared at Fei Ying and shook his head. I'm afraid this hothead doesn't know the horror of Ali. She was a witch from head to toe. Dear. Okay, little brother, you can say it. Ali approached Fei Ying with a smile. There was only less than 10 centimeters between the two. Fei Ying took a deep breath. It smells so good, big sister. What perfume are you using? Didn't you say you want to accuse me? Ali played with the pistol in her hand, but gently pressed the muzzle against Fei Ying's chest, moving slowly, like scratching an itch. Fuck, big sister. Do you like to play this game? Fei Ying deliberately moved forward. Ali reacted very quickly and took a small step back and fired another shot at the floor. Fei Ying's legs immediately trembled, but after all, he was a bold person. His face was as usual, and he said with a smile, "Big sister, if you really kill me, you don't know anything, right? And can you kill people casually? But I really want to cooperate." Fei Ying whispered at this time, "I have a recording pen on me. At least it can prove a lot of things. Big sister, can this reduce the sentence? Give it to me." Ali spread out her palm indifferently. Fei Ying said helplessly, "Big sister, do you think I can take out like this?" Ali rolled her eyes and reached out to touch Fei Ying's pocket, but it was empty. Fei Ying smiled strangely at this time. "Big sister, such an important thing, of course, should be put in an important place." As he said, Fei Ying glanced at his lower body, and at the same time he straightened his waist, revealing a mysterious bulge. Ali frowned, but she soon stretched out her hand and slowly touched the mysterious bulge. Fei Ying licked his lips. This big sister policewoman is indeed a mature woman. She really doesn't mind. Unexpectedly, at the moment when they were about to touch, Ali took a small step back. She lifted her leg and kicked without thinking. The tip of her shoe hit directly between Fei Ying's legs. Ah! The scream was even louder than the previous gunshots. Fei Ying knelt on the ground with his legs between his legs with a distorted face. He opened his mouth, but he was in so much pain that he could hardly make a sound. "Old Ma, did you see just now? This guy's sexually harassing me, right? I fought back in self-defense, right?" Ali looked sideways at Ma Hao at this time and said loudly, "Yes, yes." Sir Ma swallowed his saliva and kept nodding his head hard. Ali acted as if nothing had happened. She pointed to the immobile Fei Ying and said indifferently, "Take out the thing in his crotch." Ma Hao nodded. This kind of thing, naturally, couldn't be done by a woman. So Sir Ma walked to the front of Fei Ying and pinched up his sleeves. Under Fei Ying's desperate and frightened gaze, he used the ultimate killing move that he couldn't use in time when he was fighting with Ali just now. Monkey steals that. Catch. Chapter 582. Haven't you found it yet? Ma Hao was in contact with Lin Feng. "You guys come back first." Just now, there was not enough manpower. I had no choice but to ask Xiling to help. Now that the support guys are here, let them start the search. As Sir Ma spoke, he turned off the phone and glanced at Ali. Ali didn't say anything, which meant that she had no opinion on Ma Hao's arrangement. The positions of the two had undergone tremendous changes. From the standpoint of work, Ma Hao naturally understood that everything had to be based on Ali's wishes. This was temporarily cleared out as a room for the command center. Of course, this was the small conference room used by the crew of the Bayou cruise ship for meetings. Xiao Bao, who came from the certification, was also sitting here at this time. Of course, he was only sitting in the seating area under the podium. While watching Sir Ma and the strange woman in front of him talking about something, he was quietly slacking off. He was playing a recently popular online game, Jade Fantasy. On the floor next to Xiao Bao, a man named Fei Ying was lying down. Xiao Bao glanced at him again. Who knows what this man has experienced? His whole body was curled up on the ground, as if he had been philosophically discussed by all the men on the ship. With Xiao Bao's professional vision, it was not difficult to see that there were tears in the corners of Fei Ying's eyes, and he looked very sad. And he looked a bit like the women who were hurt in the assault cases. In addition, Fei Ying's mouth was also glued with black tape. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the temporary command room. Ma Hao stopped what he was doing and made a gesture to Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao nodded immediately. According to Ma Hao's previous instructions, once he saw his gesture, he hid the man named Fei Ying under the table and used a stun baton given by Mu Zi. Xiao Bao was only told that Ali's name was Mu Zi against Fei Ying's body. "I'm sorry. Don't make any noise. I don't know how strong the voltage of this thing is. It seems to have been modified." Xiao Bao whispered in Fei Ying's ear. "Brother, you have to cooperate." Fei Ying. Fei just looked at the floor absent-mindedly, like a walking corpse, letting Xiao Bao fiddle with his body. Only then did Ma Hao open the door. "Deputy Captain Mu, you're here?" Mu Qinghai nodded, walked in, and glanced at the place. He saw another woman beside Ma Hao, and another person sitting on the side. He remembered that the person sitting on the side seemed to be the appraiser who came later by helicopter. Mu Qinghai asked calmly, "Officer Ma, may I know why you are looking for me?" Ma Hao said indifferently, "Deputy Captain, we have something we want you to see." Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao quickly nodded and paused the game. After tricking the party that was in the middle of a dungeon, he turned on the projector on the table without any pressure and played a video. "This is..." Mu Qinghai frowned. "This is a surveillance video? Officer Ma, why do you want me to see this?" Ma Hao smiled and said, "Don't worry. Take a look first and see if there's anything wrong." Mu Qinghai did not speak. He just stood in front of the projection board and watched silently. After a while, Mu Qinghai shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, Officer Ma. I don't see any problems." Ma Hao said indifferently at this time, "Deputy Captain, this video was intercepted from the monitoring room by us. It was recorded from 3 o'clock last night to 6 o'clock in the morning. After our technician's appraisal, this video has traces of being covered. That is to say..." Ma Hao looked at Mu Qinghai with a stern look in his eyes. "Someone erased the original video data." Mu Qinghai looked at Ma Hao silently for a few seconds before frowning. "Officer Ma, what do you want to say? Are you suspecting that I changed the video data?" Ma Hao said indifferently, "Deputy Captain, I'm just asking, but I didn't say that you changed it. You seem to be in a hurry to explain something." Mu Qinghai said, "Officer Ma, it's not surprising that people would think in this way in the context of your questioning, right?" Ma Hao squinted at Mu Qinghai for a few seconds, then suddenly nodded, and then pressed the phone button here. "Bring him over." After Officer Ma finished his instructions, he saw that there was still some time, so he suddenly asked, "Deputy Captain, there seems to be some commotion on this ship, right? I see that many of your security guards and crew members have been dispatched." Mu Qinghai said indifferently, "It's nothing, just found a thief." The security guard said that after chasing to the small theater, he couldn't find him, and he heard several loud noises like the sound of something exploding. Many visitors to the theater were frightened, so it's quite nervous. Ollie lowered her head and played with her nails. Ma Hao coughed twice. At this time, the door of the small conference room opened, and a uniformed police officer pushed the door in. He actually came in with a crew member. Mu Qinghai glanced at it, and his brows frowned slightly. Ma Hao pointed to the crew member and said, "Deputy Captain, this crew member should be the one on duty in the monitoring room last night, right? Is that right?" "Yes." Mu Qinghai nodded. Ma Hao pointed to the crew member and said, "You tell me in detail what happened last night." The crew member looked at everyone nervously and said, "I was on duty last night. Then there was a sudden power outage. Then the deputy captain called me to go to the electric room to take a look. Later." "What happened later?" Ma Hao asked in a deep voice. The crew member quickly glanced at Mu Qinghai and looked away. "Later, we found that we didn't bring the key after we arrived at the electric room. The deputy captain went back to get it by himself and asked me to wait." "How long did it take?" About 7 or 8 minutes. "Anyway, the deputy captain will be back soon." "That is to say, we didn't stay together all the time, right?" Yes. You go out first." Ma Hao waved his hand. The police officer directly took the crew member out of the room. Ma Hao looked at Mu Qinghai at this time and said calmly, "Deputy Captain, you went back in such a short time. Is it really just to get the key?" Mu Qinghai said indifferently, "What else can I do besides getting the key?" Ma Hao snorted coldly. "I have learned that only you and the captain have the key to the database where the information is stored. After Xiao Bao's identification, the influence of this period of coverage is at least not within these 7 days. That is to say, this is 7 days ago, the stored information. This doesn't prove anything." Mu Qinghai shook his head and said, "The lock of the data room is not a special electronic lock. The person who wants to open it probably has some way to open it. Just like the electric room that just had an accident. It was originally locked, but wasn't it opened by someone? Officer, if you conclude that it is me just because I have the key, isn't it too arbitrary? Of course, if you want to say that I'm suspicious, I can understand, and I am quite willing to cooperate with your investigation. But if there is no substantial evidence, I can reserve the right to pursue, right? Mahout suddenly said, Deputy Captain, we also got a recorded conversation. Please listen to it. Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao took out a recording pen, unplugged it, and inserted it into the laptop. A recording began to play. It was a complete recording. After the recording was played, Ma Haod said in a deep voice, Mu Qinghai, it's obvious now. You killed Qian Guoyang and took something from him. Do you still want to quibble? Officer Ma's thunderous roar was filled with the righteousness that he had accumulated as a police officer for decades. His voice was frightening. If an ordinary person was frightened, they would immediately panic and tremble. At the very least, they would be shaken. Unexpectedly, Mu Qinghai still said calmly at this time, Officer, your recording was given to you by a man wearing a straw hat, right? It just so happens that he is the person we are looking for. This guy sneaked into the captain's bedroom and used some strange words to deceive me with bad intentions. Mu Qinghai, this conversation is already very obvious. You really dare to quibble. Officer Ma, this man's origin is unknown. If I didn't use this method to delay him, I wouldn't have been able to wait for him to come. Mu Qinghai shook his head and said, according to several provisions of the Supreme People's Court on Article 68, evidence obtained by infringing upon the legitimate rights and interests of others, or by violating the prohibitive provisions of the law, cannot be used as the basis for determining the facts of the case. The methods of violating the prohibitive provisions of the law generally refer to the private use of eavesdropping equipment, threatening others, trespassing into other people's homes, etc. As he said, Mu Qinghai looked at Ma Haod with sharp eyes. This man broke into the captain's bedroom. Someone can also prove it. In addition, can this kind of recording still be used as an effective factual basis? Mu Qinghai looked at Ma Haod's gaze that seemed to want to eat people, and finally said seriously, Officer, the last victim was found on the deck. At that time, the captain and I were filming a documentary. This can at least prove that both the captain and I have an alibi, right? F*CK. I hate this kind of intellectual the most. Ma Haod hit the table with his fist angrily. Xiao Bao, who had just started to slack off again, was so scared that he quickly disconnected again. After tricking his team members again, he quietly closed the notebook. Of course, Xiao Bao knew that Ma Haod was very angry, but there was no way to be angry. Sir Ma could only temporarily keep the deputy captain under custody with the view of suspicion in another room next door. Old Ma, come out for a while. Ali suddenly opened the door at this time. The two came to the door. Ali leaned against the wall and frowned. Old Ma, you said that it is difficult for ordinary people to be calm in the face of this situation. But isn't this Mu Qinghai too calm? Ma Haod nodded. What he said is actually right. I was just going to scare him. The information sent to the court definitely can't be written like this. But this guy is really stubborn. Mu Enli and Qian Guoyang have two contacts. But Mu Qinghai is so calm. Ali bit her lip and muttered, among these two people, who is the codename King? Ali in this case. Should we directly control both of them and not let one go? Ma Haod suddenly asked quietly at this time. Ali sighed and shook her head silently. I'm not used to this practice, but there is no other way in the face of national interests. But in fact, no matter which one of these two people is king, the other is implicated. Even if they're just foster father and foster son, but at least they have to do this secretly. The phone suddenly rang. Ma Haod glanced at the caller ID, then suddenly looked up at Ali. It's Mu Enli. Answer it. Ma Haod nodded and turned on the speakerphone. Hello, is this the captain? Officer Ma, come over. I'm here in the central control room. Don't look for me. I will explain everything. After that, the phone was turned off. Chapter 583. It should be the last one, right? On the rubber boat that landed on the island, The crew member in charge of driving pointed at the people who were sitting on it and was about to start the motor on the boat. But at this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from the beach. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. There are still people who haven't uploaded yet. That was Lin Feng's shout. Beside Lin Feng, Ren Xiling and Lizzie were also running towards this side at this time. The three of them finally caught up with the rubber boat. Luochio, you are here too. Lizzie blinked. Luochio made way for Ren Xiling to sit down and said indifferently, we stayed a little too long. Seeing that it was almost time, we planned to go back. Ren Xiling opened her collar very inelegantly and fanned herself with her palm. Didn't I ask you to go back to your room and lock yourself up? Boss Luo acted as if he did not hear it. He looked at Lin Feng and said, Why are you in such a hurry? Lin Feng said subconsciously, We found the captain, and he seemed to want to confess something. Luochio nodded thoughtfully. Ren Xiling looked at the Bayou cruise ship in front at this time and frowned. But how did he bypass us and get on the ship quietly? We couldn't find him on the other side of the cliff. Sister Ren, who cares if we can find him or not? Let's wait and see what the captain says. Lizzie smacked her lips and said, I really want to know the truth about the cruise ship murder case and the legendary treasure. And maybe we will know later. Ren Xiling nodded, then looked at Yu Yi and blinked. I'm sorry, Yu Yi. I originally planned to have fun, but I didn't expect this to happen. But isn't it interesting to encounter such exciting things? It's good to be able to accompany you. Yu Yi smiled slightly. Annie Ren felt that she had been completely conquered by her future daughter-in-law. Her eyes were filled with stars as she said with lofty sentiments, Let's go. Let me show you. Why should we go when the police are handling a case? Unexpectedly, Boss Luo shook his head. Don't you want to hear the captain's confession? No need, Luochio said calmly. What a sensible child. Lin Feng also looked at the orphan of the former leader of the brigade with stars in his eyes. He felt as if he was about to be conquered. She didn't seem like a certain demonic woman at all. Even so, he didn't care if he said, Why don't you not go as well? By the way, madam, why don't you? The front corner was the corridor where the entrance door of the Bayou cruise ship's central control room was located. Lin Feng hesitated for a long time before he mustered up the courage to speak. But before he could finish, he was suddenly interrupted. He saw that Ren Xiling suddenly held her arms at this time, as if she had a chill. She frowned and said, There is a murderous aura. Murderous aura? Lin Feng was stunned. Just like that, he stepped out of this corner. On the other side, a few people also walked out from the opposite side. The leaders were Sir Ma and Miss Ali. As for the deputy captain Mu Qinghai and Fei Ying, who had escaped before, there was also a police officer and Xiao Bao behind them. It turned out to be the telepathy between old rivals. Kiki, Lin Feng, you guys are back too. Sir Ma shouted from a distance. Yes. We rushed all the way back without stopping. Lin Feng walked quickly. The two groups of people finally met at the door. Ali frowned and was about to speak when Ren Xiling took the lead and pushed open the door of the central control room. Ali shook her head and whispered to Ren Xiling, Xiling, no matter what happens, just remember it in your heart. Don't say it out loud. Ren Xiling nodded silently. To some extent, these two women also had a tacit understanding that others could not understand. At this time, in the central control room, only the old captain stayed here alone. No other crew members could be seen here. Mu Enli was holding the phone on the console at this time. He didn't seem to care about everyone walking in at all. He just talked to himself. Don't worry about the external power supply. Fix the backup power supply line first and restore the instrument operation in the central control room as soon as possible. With that said, the old captain switched to another line. Use the radio to explain to the tourists that the power system is out of order and will be repaired soon. Let the tourists not panic. In addition, talk about the case and say that the murderer has been caught. Let the tourists feel at ease. In addition, tell the merchants on the ship to give discounts to tourists. I will compensate them for their losses in my personal name. He switched to different lines one by one and issued instructions in an orderly manner as if there was no one else around. He was a person who was immersed in his own work and forgot to eat and sleep. Everyone, please work hard. I will reward everyone. I know that some drunkards have been greedy for my private collection for a long time. After returning, I will let you drink to your heart's content. Even across the phone line, even across the distance from the door to the console, the cheers could be heard. Mu Qinghai looked at the old captain's busy back in silence. He had never been able to get such cheers from the crew. The old captain finally put down the phone. He looked through the glass of the control room and looked at the endless sea in front of him. After a while, he slowly turned around, looked at the people here one by one, and nodded, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Mahoud said subconsciously, "It's nothing. You handle these things well. Come here." After Mu Inli said indifferently, he walked toward his office with his hands behind his back. Everyone followed him silently. Even Ali seemed to have been subdued by this old captain's bearing from the moment she entered the door. She felt a calmness from this old man, like the calm of the ocean, or deep. Finally, Mu Inli walked to his seat, but he did not sit down. Sir Ma took the initiative to ask at this time, "Captain, you just said that you have caught the murderer. What do you mean? Isn't this the Qian Guoyang you know was killed by me?" Mu Inli was very direct. It was so direct that it almost blocked everyone's mouth, strangling all the words that were intended to be said between the lips. It was more like a hurricane on the calm sea. The shock brought by this impact was extremely huge. But Ali heard something else and frowned. "You mean the Qian Guoyang we know? This person's identity information is fake, isn't it?" Mu Inli shook his head. "In fact, his real identity is an agent, and his code name is K09, right?" Ali said suddenly. Mahoud glanced at Ali in amazement. Ali didn't say these before. Obviously, Ali still had some things that couldn't be revealed. "You are." Mu Inli looked at Ali in surprise. Ali said indifferently, "I'm just engaged in some security work. K09 is my goal this time." Mu Inli nodded in realization. He was silent for a while, as if he was digesting something. Finally, he bent down and opened the drawer on the table. Lin Feng subconsciously waved his hand and shouted, "Don't move." Sir Ma pressed Lin Feng's arm and shook his head. Mu Inli didn't stop. After opening the drawer, he took out something wrapped in canvas. It was about 20 centimeters long, 10 centimeters wide, and 10 centimeters high. The old captain held the thing wrapped in the worn canvas with both hands and gently put it on the table. He carefully unwrapped the cloth and looked at Ali. "Then I think you came here for this thing." With the opening of the canvas, it turned out to be an iron box. Mu Inli opened the box again and took out a slightly smaller instrument. There was also a small screen where there was an interface. What is this?" Sir Ma frowned subconsciously. Mu Inli whispered, "This is a special detector that can scan the distance within 100 kilometers, whether it is energy reaction, shallow sea mineral deposits, sea defense arrangements, or something more secretive. In other words, this is a recorder that collects all the data that can be disclosed or not on the coast. In short, it is a strategic black box." Chapter 584. It was quiet. It was quiet all around. Everyone's eyes fell on Xiao Bao at this moment, because Xiao Bao was reading the data in the black box at this time. But it could be seen that Xiao Bao was very nervous at this time. Even his operation seemed a little sluggish. This thing scanned a lot of data from the coastline of the mainland. Bayou cruise ship had been sailing around for the past few years. To put it bluntly, Bayou cruise ship had almost run all over the coastline of the mainland. Although the current technology was very advanced, and humans had launched satellites in outer space that could easily depict national maps. But the function of this black box and the data it recorded were not simple things such as tides, ocean currents, and seismic fluctuations that were announced first. Some things needed to be shielded from the international view. If the data of this black box was exposed, it would be equivalent to the country's entire coastal defense circle. How is it? Can it be cracked? Ali asked with a serious face at this time. No one here could make any jokes about this black box. The things that were involved were too big. Xiao Bao could only swallow his saliva and said, "Is this box really a product from 30 years ago? If it is true, some of the technology at that time was probably at least 20 years ahead. In other words, it can't be deciphered." Ali frowned. Xiao Bao shook his head and said, "That's not it. Its technology seemed very advanced at that time. I even wondered if it was black technology. But after all, it is now 30 years later. No matter how advanced it looked at that time, it seems ordinary now. It's cracked. What's the result? Ollie propped her arm and leaned behind Xiao Bao, staring at the content on the laptop screen. Xiao Bao could only browse through the screen even more nervously. He quickly scrolled down with the mouse. There's really data. The time is... It really started 30 years ago. But it seems that he stopped working after less than a year. Ollie subconsciously looked at the old Captain Mu Enli. Everyone also looked at the old captain. The old captain shook his head at this time and said, I have already said that I turned it off early in the morning. Ollie stared at Mu Enli and did not miss the expression on the old captain's face at all. She said in a deep voice, Mu Enli, are you king or not? Who placed this black box on Bayou cruise ship? The old captain touched his clothes and took out a pack of cigarettes from a soft pack. But he found that the soft box had been deformed, and the cigarette inside was crumpled. He shook his head, opened the drawer, took out some cigarette paper and tobacco leaves, and slowly began to smoke. After he took a puff of the cigarette, he slowly said, I have already said that I used to be a Marine outside of the Navy. After the predecessor of Bayou cruise ship was sunk, I retired. Later, I was assigned to work in a shipyard. Let's skip these things. Let me tell you about the origin of King. Mu Enli recalled, at that time, it happened that our country began to develop rapidly, and all walks of life were flourishing, even the tourism industry on the sea. After the transformation of Bayou cruise ship was completed, it would be one of the first cruise ships to be introduced to this country. Actually, at that time, I was very tired of living abroad and wanted to find a chance to return home. Mu Enli shook his head, but in terms of the environment at that time, it was more difficult. I'm not afraid to say that my father smuggled over in the 1960s. His identity was not very honorable. Later, even when I became a Marine, the environment did not change. My father always wanted to return home, but unfortunately, he could not find a way. At that time, there were too many review conditions in this regard. In the end, he left gloomily. I heard that the company that introduced Bayou cruise ship intended to find an experienced person to be the captain of Bayou cruise ship temporarily, so I took the initiative to contact them. Mu Enli lowered his head and looked at the half-burned cigarette. They did not take the initiative to find me, but the company reacted quickly. They seemed to be happy to see that I had the identity of an overseas Chinese and a former Marine. They agreed to help me. I thought things would go so smoothly, but unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Mu Enli sighed. I don't know who they are. I just know that they are from the company that the shipyard belongs to. They are very mysterious. They came to me and asked me to bring this black box to Bayou cruise ship. Otherwise, they would not agree to let me go. In fact, they even trapped me for a few days. Don't mention it. I don't want to remember those days. You still agreed to help them later? Ollie frowned. She was too familiar with this method. In the department where she was working now, in the last century, many people were threatened in this way, and then had to engage in some work that could endanger society. At least I don't want to die. I just want to return home and then live some ordinary days. I'm tired of the life of being discriminated against and oppressed locally. Mu Enli shook his head and said, Who wants to be tortured all the time? No one, right? And they did promise me a lot of benefits. Normal people should know how to choose. I didn't grow up in this country since I was a child. The talk about patriotism is not very suitable for me. Ollie also shook her head and did not intend to discuss the issue of loyalty with Mu Enli. Instead, she said sternly, Captain, you have been in contact with these mysterious people for so long. Have you heard anything? Mu Enli thought for a while and said, They should not be people from the State Department, but they are indeed people in the company where the shipyard is located. I found out from listening to their occasional chats. The reason why they want to install this black box seems to be that they intend to use this black box as a bargaining chip after the matter is done, hoping to get the support of the state. Of course, I don't know if there is the intention of some people in the military behind it. A country with this kind of capital is really capable of doing anything. Ali sneered and then said puzzledly, So you became king, an agent who became a midway agent? But why do you want to turn off this black box? Aren't you afraid that those people will find you? Mu Inli said, in the first year, they would almost contact me quietly once a month. But I don't know why, after a year, I could no longer contact these people. Later, I kept paying attention to foreign news. About a few months later, I heard that the boss behind the shipyard company had fallen. At that time, the military there seemed to have changed. I secretly guessed that because of this, the shipyard company did not continue to contact me, and the original plan was put on hold. I watched for a few more months and found that there was still no movement, so I quietly turned off this black box and did not let it continue to work. In this case, why don't you directly expose this thing? Mahoud shook his head and said, you should have turned in this thing when you first returned to the country. Mu Inli looked at Mahoud and said after a while, Officer Ma, after I handed in this thing, what will happen to me? I said that I just want to live a normal life. Sir Ma was startled and remained silent. He seemed to want to say something, but he felt pale and powerless. Mu Inli shook his head and said, maybe it is different now, but in the era 30 years ago. Who can comment on it? Then why do you still keep it? Ali asked again. Mu Inli said matter-of-factly, who doesn't want to leave a way out for themselves? I don't know if this plan will see the light of day. If this plan is found out one day, I can at least negotiate with them. Turning it off and not letting it work is already the biggest concession I can make. But Qian Guoyang came to you. Ali narrowed her eyes. Mu Inli nodded. Unexpectedly, I am about to retire. I am also old. I don't think I will live for a few years. This secret may leave with me. I didn't expect that at this juncture. Indeed, Qian Guoyang came. The organization he is in seems to have undoubtedly found some clues about this plan from the old files, and then they have been tracking it down. Finally, they found the source document of this plan from the relics of the original shipyard company's behind-the-scenes boss. Mu Inli smiled bitterly. I thought it would be fine to turn off this black box, but I didn't expect there to be some signal sources I don't understand in it. It has been on all these years. Qian Guoyang detected this signal source through a special method. Only then did he know that the black box was still working. Naturally, he came to me. Qian Guoyang contacted you twice just to retrieve this black box? Yes. Then why did you kill him? Mu Inli looked at Ali with a complicated gaze. If you have lived in a place for 30 years, will you also have feelings? I have been back for 30 years. I adopted Qinghai here and have my own family. I'm not alone like before. Qinghai has a very good future. I don't want to delay him because of me. Anyway, I don't have many years to live. I just want to leave him a pure life. This child was given to me by God. I found him on the dock. At that time, he was very weak. At first sight, I was moved by the way he looked at me. Such a weak life, lonely. When I saw him, it was like seeing the first half of my life. Mu Inli sighed. If it was only the shipyard company that gave birth to this plan for personal gain, there may be room for negotiation. But since I've been targeted by the special department of that country, I know that not only me, but Qinghai will also be implicated. Dad! Mu Qinghai's eyes were red, and he shouted in a trembling voice. So you took the risk and killed Qian Guoyang? Ali continued to stare at Mu Inli and asked, I didn't think too carefully at the time. Mu Inli shook his head and said, it's just that there was an evil thought in my heart, and then it got out of hand. I can't let this person leave. So when he found me the second time, I told him to come to me. How did you kill him? Mahoud also asked directly. Mu Inli said, Qian Guoyang is a professionally trained person. I know that there is no way to kill him with ordinary methods. Besides, I am old. It's even more impossible to kill him directly. So I chose to use poison. The restaurant I often go to has what I need, pufferfish. Xiao Bao said at this time, Sir Ma, after the data collected from the deceased is sent back for analysis, it can be determined that it is indeed pufferfish poison. Mu Inli said indifferently, I used a fine needle to quench the poison and then hid it on the cushion of the chair. When the time came, Qian Guoyang came to me and I began to negotiate with him. He was very careful, but in the end, he sat down carelessly. After being pricked by the needle, he immediately felt that something was wrong. I fought with him for a while. The poison took effect, and his body became weak. I stabbed him in the chest with a knife, but I didn't have much strength. The stab was not deep. As a result, Qian Guoyang rushed out of my room and escaped. But he didn't run far before he fell down and was dying. The old captain looked at Sir Ma at this time and said, "I was afraid that this matter would be discovered, so I quickly turned off the power. When Qing Hai and the crew left, I quietly changed the video." Why did Qian Guoyang wait until the day before he died? Of course, it was to prove that he was not present. Mu Enli said indifferently, "I thought Qian Guoyang would die directly from the poison, but I didn't expect his body to be very strong. He should have undergone anti-poison training, or the amount of poison I used was not enough. But this is good. At least it can give me time to think about how to deal with the subsequent matters." "I don't understand. How did you make Qian Guoyang suddenly appear?" Ma Haod was puzzled, and the surveillance was already normal at that time. "It's just a very simple trick," Mu Enli said indifferently. "Have you opened the door of the utility room, but you can't find anything inside?" Ma Haod nodded. "Indeed," Mu Enli said, "but in fact Qian Guoyang was hiding in the utility room. But it was above the utility room." Lin Feng frowned. "This is not right. Even if someone could hide above, it is impossible for the ground to be so clean. And the door is still locked. Qian Guoyang is a seriously injured person. How can he still have the mood to lock the door?" "Above what I said, there is naturally a place to enter." Mu Enli shook his head and said, "You're only thinking about the door and the inside, but you never think about the top of the door." "The top of the door," Sir Ma frowned and said, "I remember that there is only a steel plate on the top, and there are screws. There is only a screw head. It is not screwed," Mu Enli said indifferently. "I am familiar with all the places on this ship. The steel plate is not as thick as it looks. I hid Qian Guoyang inside. Since his physical fitness is so good and the poison can't kill him, then it's simple. I used some first aid methods that I learned in the army before, so that he would at least not die immediately. I took some drugs from the medical room and injected him with them, at least to ensure that he has the ability to move for a short period of time. Next, when he is a little clearer, he will knock open the steel plate and fall. After the steel plate is knocked open, it will automatically return to its original position because of the weight. Because of the screw head, it looks like it is stable. The camera over there has a blind spot. The position where he fell just happened to be invisible. Then, we will see where he can go. But he is tenacious. He can actually walk to the deck. But the knife wound on the deceased body has two different strengths. How do you explain this?" Xiao Bao suddenly asked. Mu Enli said, "Probably it was touched when he fell." Xiao Bao nodded and seemed to agree with this statement. "Then why are there two different palm prints?" "That is because I deliberately stuck Qian Guoyang's blood print. The purpose is naturally to confuse and not let people know where he really fell, creating an illusion that he was further back, but suddenly appeared." Mu Enli said indifferently, "The blood is the same. I don't think anyone will pay attention to the difference in the palm print." But someone really noticed it. Ma Haod said, and suddenly glanced at Fei Ying. Fei Ying, who was still in pain with his leg clamped, couldn't be proud at all. He still leaned against the wall with a scattered gaze. "That's not right." Ali frowned, "since the palm print at the back was imprinted by you, but there is still a long time before Qian Guoyang fell. Such an obvious thing, wouldn't the passers-by notice it? That side is not the tourist passage, but it leads to the work area." Mu Enli said, "As I said, I am more familiar with this ship than anyone. At the end of the front and back corridors, I quietly prevented the warning strips that prohibit walking." Mu Enli said indifferently, "I know that if the deceased appears, that side will be blocked. At that time, the crew members who go to the alert will definitely see it. But after they see it, they will probably only think that someone has blocked it earlier, and they will not suspect anything." "But how can you guarantee that there are tourists who don't know about it and walk down from the deck door?" Sir Ma continued to ask. "The door on the stairs can only be opened from the inside." Mu Enli said naturally, "If the tourists can't open it, do they have to hit the door?" Ma Haod and Ali looked at each other and frowned. But Fei Ying suddenly said at this time, "Captain, don't try to lie to me. If Qian Guoyang was really killed by you, then why are the drawings and protractors on your son? I saw your son looking for things in your room with my own eyes." Mu Enli was taken aback, then looked at Mu Qing Hai in amazement. He frowned and looked at Mu Qing Hai, who was silent. He suddenly sighed and smiled bitterly. It turns out that you picked it up. Picked it up? Fang was taken aback. Mu Inli sighed and said, the place where the box was hidden is only known to me and the insiders of the plan back then. At that time, they specially modified the Bayou cruise and hid it in the box. But for the sake of safety, they also made the design drawings and protractors that could be used as guides. Later on, I felt that it wasn't safe, so I took that place as my bedroom. After I poisoned Qian Guoyang, he must have placed it somewhere when he escaped. After I found him, I didn't find anything on him. Qinghai, did you really go to my room to look for things? I just... Mu Qinghai lowered his head, and his eyes were red. He suddenly took off the earpiece on his ear that was used to facilitate communication on the ship. He looked at Mu Inli and knelt on the ground in pain. I was just obsessed for a while. I thought there was a treasure. Fool! 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 Mu Inli slammed the table heavily and said angrily, I have raised you for 30 years. I have never married in my life. I only have you as my son. If there is a treasure, do I have to bring it into the coffin? There is nothing that I won't leave to you. You fool. Val Spawn, where is your ambition? Didn't you say that you want to be a good captain? Didn't you want to prove to me your ability? Why are you so confused at this time? You actually became greedy for this kind of thing? Do you know that the thing you are looking for is something you can't afford to offend? Dad, stop it. Please stop it. Mu Qinghai raised his head, clenched his fists, and cried painfully, Please stop talking, okay? The old captain suddenly stood up, picked up the pen holder on the table, and slammed it towards Mu Qinghai. It hit Mu Qinghai's forehead directly, but Mu Qinghai did not dare to move, even if his forehead bled in an instant. Val Spawn. Mu Inli gasped for breath. I killed Qian Guoyang just to not let you be implicated. You actually provoked this matter by yourself. You really want to piss me off? Piss me off? Mu Inli grabbed his heart with a painful face. His face was pale. After he finished speaking, he fell to the ground in pain. Chapter 585. Get out of the way. Please get out of the way. The police should also go outside first. Don't get in the way. The doctor on the ship shouted at the people around the medical room at this time. Sirma looked at the doctor, who was afraid not long ago and was unwilling to examine the deceased. He was very disgusted. That was not the attitude just now. It was just that on the way to send the old captain, the crew members dropped their work one by one and followed anxiously. They looked worried and stayed here. Sirma probably understood the doctor's inconsistent reaction. How high of a prestige did it take to be able to make every crew member feel as if they were a family member who was seriously ill? I feel like home here. Run Xiling leaned against the door of the medical room with her arms crossed and suddenly said faintly. She looked at Ali and seemed to have a lot to say, but Ali just shook her head. She seemed to be weighing something. At this time, Mu Qinghai silently took out a drawing from his body and handed it to Ma Haud. His voice was a little hoarse. This is the drawing. The protractor is on the man. Ma Haud took it and said subconsciously, Tell me how you found it. Mu Qinghai looked at the door of the medical room and whispered, My dad is not in good health. Every time I get off work, I will quietly go to his room to take a look. Last night, I also went to see him as usual. But on the way, I heard some strange sounds, so I went to take a look out of curiosity. But I didn't see anyone. I just found a few drops of blood on the ground. The flower pot in the corridor was moved. I saw something exposed. Later, when I moved the flower pot, I found these two things. Can you solve it? Fei asked curiously. Mu Qinghai glanced at Fei coldly, seemingly with hatred. Fei subconsciously shrank his shoulders. I am also the deputy captain of this ship. You don't need to doubt my professional knowledge. Let's wait for the treatment results first. Ma Haud shook his head, took the drawing to Ali, and handed it over. He asked quietly, Ali, is Mu Qinghai okay? Ali thought for a while before saying, The most important thing is this box. As long as it doesn't fall into the hands of a foreign country, everything can be discussed. Mu Qinghai was just Mu Inli's adopted son, but he would probably do a lot of background checks in the future. If he was innocent, it would probably be fine. We don't have the same practice as before, but Mu Inli probably can't do anything about it. As she spoke, Ali patted Mahoud's shoulder. It's not convenient for me to care about killing people right now. But after you arrest Mu Inli on the charge of being a murderer, I will bring him back quietly. I understand. Mahoud suddenly lowered his voice. But Ali, do you think Mu Inli's words are completely fine? I don't know much about the box, but the part about killing people, I feel like there are a lot of loopholes. Ali was silent for a while before suddenly saying, Old Ma, I'm not a police officer anymore. After returning, I will take Mu Inli away immediately. If you want to figure out the truth, you can only do it before you log in. During this time, you can still interrogate Mu Inli. Mahoud was taken aback and said subconsciously, You reported it? It's a matter of great importance. I can't hide it. Ali nodded. Thank you. Mahoud nodded. He knew that Ali had already quietly made an exception for the sake of their previous relationship. If everything was done according to the rules, he was afraid that no one would be allowed to contact Mu Inli. I hope he can wake up as soon as possible. Sir Ma sighed and silently looked at the work light outside the medical room door. Cardiac stimulant. The doctor on board quickly ordered the working nurse at this time, and at the same time frowned at the instrument next to him. The doctor suddenly opened his mouth in surprise, and at the same time, he felt that his arm was firmly grasped. He subconsciously looked at the old captain lying down, but he saw the old captain suddenly open his eyes. The doctor was taken aback, then suddenly turned his head and said, You go and get me the medicine first. Hurry up. The nurse had no choice but to leave in a hurry. The doctor frowned at this time and whispered, Captain, I didn't notice it just now. Why are you okay? Mu Inli slowly sat up, pulled off the patch on his body, and whispered, Old friend, can you help me do something? I beg you. Brother Mu, back then, my surgery failed and caused the patient's death. I was driven away by the hospital. It was the time when I was down, but you took me in to work on the ship. The doctor shook his head. I will never forget your kindness to me for the rest of my life. Who on this ship has not received your kindness? As long as it is not something outrageous, let alone a small matter, I will help you no matter how big it is. Aren't you going to ask me what happened? Mu Inli suddenly said. The doctor smiled. I only know that you're the captain of Bayou cruise ship. I know that you will never do anything wrong to Bayou cruise ship. After all, this is our home. Then give me some time. Mu Inli sighed. The doctor said, Brother Mu, there's a small door over there. Mu Inli stood up and walked towards the door pointed by the doctor. Before pushing the door, the doctor suddenly shouted, Brother Mu. Mu Inli turned back. The doctor said sternly, Don't forget, you said that after returning, you will treat everyone to drinks. And your personal collection. Drunkard. Mu Inli shook his head. If there is a chance. The old captain pushed the door and went out. The doctor stared blankly at the door closed, then took a deep breath. Suddenly, he took out a few bottles from the cabinet, and then poured the contents into the gauze at the same time. After the nurse came in with the medicine, the doctor hiding behind the door suddenly covered the nurse's mouth with gauze, and the nurse fainted instantly. I'm sorry, Shaoli. I will introduce you to a good man next time. The doctor said apologetically, then looked at the time silently, waiting for the time. Well, sir, at least now it proves that I didn't kill anyone, right? I asked for better treatment. Fei Ying, who was squatting on the ground, looked up at the people in front of him at this time. Keep squatting. Even if you didn't kill anyone, you stole a lot of things and disturbed public order. Mahoud snorted coldly, then scratched his 5 fingers. You are also suspected of molesting women. Fei Ying shuddered subconsciously and had to continue squatting, but his handcuffed hands quietly touched the soles of his slippers. As a thief with quality and cultivation, how could he not have some small equipment on him? As soon as the soles of his shoes were pulled out, a small iron wire was pulled out. Click! The handcuffs were naturally unlocked. But the people here seem to be very good at martial arts, right? Fei Ying looked back and forth at everyone, and finally locked on a petite girl who looked harmless and only knew how to eat. She seems to be called Li Zi. Fei Ying once again pulled out a small blade from the sole of another slipper, and then suddenly took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention. He went directly behind Li Zi and put the blade in front of her neck. Li Zi just blinked as if she didn't react. But Fei Ying had already shouted, "Don't move. Sometimes I can't control my hands." "Fei Ying, stop!" Sima also shouted in a deep voice, and everyone surrounded Fei Ying. "If you let go now, you can still turn back. I said don't move. Get out of the way." Fei Ying was fearless. "I'm just going to make a small fortune. What the hell is this box? I don't want it now. Get out of the way. Otherwise, if this little girl's face is scratched, don't blame me." "Fei Ying, I'll tell you for the last time. Let her go," Ma Hao said angrily again. Ali's eyes were slightly cold, and her hand suddenly touched her waist. "This sister, I see you." Fei Ying chuckled at this time, so that Ali had to stop. "Sister Run, am I being held hostage?" Li Zi looked at Run, Xiling subconsciously at this time. Can you stop eating?" Run Xiling looked at her assistant with a regretful look. How big of a nerve does she have to have no reaction at all? At this time, Fei Ying was holding Li Zi and retreating from the crowd step by step. "Stop. No one is to catch up. When I'm safe, I will naturally let her go." With that said, Fei Ying held Li Zi and temporarily turned the corner of the corridor from everyone's line of sight. "Catch up." At the same time, the door of the medical room suddenly opened. The doctor staggered out and said in horror, "Captain, the captain is gone." "What?" Ma Hao was stunned. She quickly glanced at Ali and grabbed her hair directly. "Old Ma, you save the hostages. I'll chase after Muenli," Ali said calmly. "I'm counting on you." Ma Hao nodded, then rushed in the direction where Fei Ying escaped with a group of people. But there was still a police officer left here to watch over Mu Qinghai. Ali glanced at him, then walked into the medical room with the doctor and asked him about the situation at the time. "Is it this small door?" Ali asked. The doctor hesitated and said, "Then I'm not sure. I fainted at that time, and I don't know where the captain left from. But if you didn't see him at the main door, it should be this small door." Ali glanced at the doctor indifferently, and the doctor's gaze shifted slightly. Ali then nodded. "Okay, I understand." With that said, she poked her head out of the door and waved to the police officer who watched over Mu Qinghai. "Come here. I need your help with something." Although he didn't know who this woman was, even Sir Ma seemed to be very interested in her, so the police officer hurriedly walked over. "Excuse me, is there anything I can help with?" "Just stand there." Ali closed the door and said indifferently. The police officer was taken aback, and then he was embarrassed for about 10 seconds. Then Ali slightly knocked on the door, nodded, and walked out again. Mu Qinghai was gone. How can this be?" The police officer suddenly looked annoyed. "It's okay. I'll let him go on purpose." Ali shook her head and then ordered, "You go catch up with your boss and help rescue the hostage." With that said, Ali left the place. The old captain's footsteps were fast, but he also came to the rest area of the Bayou cruise ship's staff very calmly. "Captain, why are you?" In the corridor, Ani Chui, who was holding cleaning tools, happened to meet Mu Enli at the corner. "I'm fine." Mu Enli shook his head. "Don't panic, Ani Chui." The cleaning Ani nodded quickly and then said worriedly, But I heard that those police officers..." "It's okay. It will be okay soon." Mu Enli comforted softly. Ani Chui patted her chest and sighed in relief. "Captain, if you say it's okay, it must be okay. I believe in you." His weight could make everyone on the ship feel at ease, just like a huge and heavy anchor. No matter how violent the ocean was, as long as the anchor was there, the Bayou cruise ship would be stable. "I remember that your child is about to go to high school, right? His name is, by the way, Zhang Liming, right?" Mu Enli smiled. "Captain, you still remember the child's name. That child is good. He will be promising in the future." Mu Enli said softly, and then ordered, "You sprained your waist last month. Look after yourself. Don't be too tired." "I understand. Go to work." Along the way, in addition to Ani Chui, he also met several other people who worked on the ship. He greeted and chatted for a while, but he could always talk about each other's daily affairs. "Captain, I'm getting married next month. You must come." "Captain, come to my house for dinner next time. My mother brought a batch of old yellow wine from her hometown." "Captain, it seems that the police are looking for you. You must be careful." "Captain, Thank you, thank you. Standing in front of the door of his bedroom, Mu Inli took a deep breath. He opened the door and did not close it. He walked to the bed and pushed it open. Mu Inli could naturally see that the wallpaper had been peeled away. He thought that it was probably Mu Qinghai who got it. He sighed. His gaze was a little complicated, then sad. He silently took out his pocket watch and opened it. Then he opened the cover behind his arms, took out a very small key, and inserted it into the only keyhole. The opening was not big. Mu Inli reached in with his hands and pulled out a box from inside. It was a very old leather box. There were even cracks in many places on the leather. Mu Inli hugged it and patted it gently. He did not speak. He just walked to the closet and found a clean set of captain's uniform and hat. After tidying himself up, Mu Inli reached out and pulled the front edge of his hat. He carried the old leather box, closed the door, and left straight away. This time, he did not want to meet anyone. So, he chose a quiet path. He was more familiar with the Bayou cruise ship than anyone else. If he wanted to bypass something, no one could beat him. The spiral ladder that few people used, the safety passage that was rarely used, and the old extension ladder. He climbed to the Bayou cruise ship's whistle. This was not the highest place on the Bayou cruise ship, but no one came here except for maintenance. Mu Inli walked to the edge, put down the leather box, and opened it. It had been a long time since he had opened this leather box, but the things inside were still fresh in his mind, as if it had happened yesterday. There was an old-fashioned silver pistol, the kind that could only hold 6 bullets. He took out the gun, and then closed the leather box again. Mu Inli took a deep breath, held it with both hands, gritted his teeth, and threw it out forcefully. When no one saw it, the leather box sank into the sea without any accident. This my sin. He closed his eyes and put the old pistol deep into his mouth. His fingers clicked lightly, but there was no fear in his expression. It was calm as the sea in front of him. Sir, if this shot goes down, your life will really end this time. Mu Inli subconsciously opened his eyes and put down the gun. After a while, he turned around and looked at the person who was talking to him. He remembered this voice, and now he saw the person's appearance clearly. This man with a mask could not estimate his age. Mu Inli suddenly said, "In my life, I have fought wars and killed pirates. I have encountered all kinds of strange things. I didn't expect that there were still some magical things that I didn't expect. Will you really take away my soul?" "Of course," the boss said indifferently. "According to the content of the contract, this is indeed the case." "What is a soul?" Mu Inli shook his head. "People are dead, and their thoughts are extinguished. What else can a so-called soul feel?" "Soul?" The boss turned to look at Dahai and said, "Probably it can be regarded as another form of life continuation." Continuation. The old captain was silent for a while. He also looked at Dahai and said, "I already have something to continue. I don't want to understand that kind of illusory thing anymore." "Of course, this is also your choice, sir." Boss Luo nodded. "I just came to remind you, sir. According to the content of the contract, you actually still have a few days, but if you insist on ending it here, we will not change the content of the contract. So, you have to think about it." Mu Inli shook his head. "Too many unexpected things have happened, so it's not necessary. If it drags on for a long time, there'll be too many variables. I can't afford to lose." "Then, I won't bother you." Boss Luo nodded and stepped back, disappearing. The old captain looked at the place where there was no one. He felt that he had heard the words, "won't bother you," somewhere before. He shook his head. The arrival of this mysterious businessman did not change his plan, and such an interruption did not seem to shake his determination to seek death. "I'm here to accompany you," Mu Inli said silently in his heart. He once again swallowed the pistol into his mouth and held it against his upper jaw. "Dad, don't! Dad, don't be impulsive." Mu Qinghai rushed forward nervously. He gasped for breath. He must have been desperately rushing for time along the way, but he did not dare to force Mu Inli. He knew his father's stubborn character too well. "What are you doing here?" "Well, I want to say to you, I have already made it very clear in the office. Have you forgotten?" Mu Inli looked at Mu Qinghai with a stern face. That was the first time in Mu Qinghai's life that he had seen the most stern face from Mu Inli. "I heard it. I heard it all. How can I not hear it?" Mu Qinghai said painfully You were talking to Officer Ma and the others, but you quietly used the communicator under the table and used Morse code to silence me. Can't I hear it? Mu Qinghai knelt on the ground in pain. I don't care if you did anything harmful 30 years ago. I don't care if you're the so-called agent or not. But you have raised me for 30 years. I was abandoned at the dock back then. If it weren't for you, there would be no Mu Qinghai today. Dad, even if we are not biological, if I want you to take the blame for me, am I still human? But why did you threaten me at that time? You threatened me with your own life. You forced me to be silent. Do you know how uncomfortable I felt? I don't have long to live. I don't even have a few days left. Mu Enli shook his head and sighed. You silly boy, is it worthwhile to sacrifice your future for a person who is about to enter the coffin? Qin Guoyang came to negotiate with me. I couldn't kill him. Instead, he escaped. I had no choice but to go to the surveillance camera to replace the video. You should have seen me at that time, right? Mu Qinghai shed tears and nodded silently. I saw you when I went back to get the key. At that time, I didn't know what you were going to do, and I didn't say anything. I just saw you washing away the part where Qin Guoyang escaped from your room. I was going to ask you, but looking at you, your expression at that time was too. I have never seen you like this. It was too scary, too unfamiliar. Mu Enli shook his head and sighed. Is it scary? Silly boy, when your old man killed pirates back then, I looked 10 times scarier than this. I originally remembered Qian Guoyang's location, but when I went to look for him, I couldn't see him anymore. You took him away first, right? When Qian Guoyang died, I looked at the position where he appeared, and I knew that person was you. Mu Qinghai nodded. Dad, you knew it was me all along? Mu Enli sighed and said, the small space above the utility room. I knew it was you at first glance. At that time, you were still young. I went out on the boat all day long, so I took you with me. But you were naughty and hid every now and then. That place was the place you used to hide from people. Do you think I'm old and confused? Dad, you still remember. Why don't I remember? Mu Enli smiled bitterly and glanced around. Just like how you can find this place. You're familiar with me. Don't you think I am familiar with you? Silly boy. But you were a silly boy. Did you really do this kind of killing for the treasure? No. Mu Qinghai said quickly. I don't care about the treasure at all. It's him. When I found him, he told me that you might be a secret agent. There is also the case. He promised me that if I save him, he will give me a lot of benefits. But Mu Qinghai widened his eyes and said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't let your things be exposed. I can't. I really can't. I want to destroy these. I want you to enjoy your old age. I want you to watch me succeed in my career. I want you to watch me start a family. Dad, I don't want to watch you go to jail. Dad, if I didn't meet you in this life, I might have died on the dock. I never want you to suffer. I want you to retire from the Bayou cruise in glory. I want you to always be the perfect captain in the hearts of the crew. I don't want it to be broken. Dad, I will never allow you to have a stain in your life. But why did you turn yourself in the end? Why? Mu Enli sighed and said, Silly boy, how can there be no stain in a person's life? I'm not as perfect as you think. But it's fine. I have explained the matter of bringing the case. And Qian Guoyang, even if you don't help me, he won't live long. Now that the case has been handed over, I admit that I killed the person. If you really care about the kindness of me raising you, then treat it as a repayment and keep silent. If you want me to die with grievances, I have nothing to say. Mu Enli pressed the pistol against his temple this time, but I really hope to understand this matter like this. I am tired. I don't want to be interrogated endlessly, and I don't want to face more things. Qinghai, just think of me as a coward. Just think of it as fulfilling my last wish. Dad, don't be impulsive. Mu Qinghai desperately climbed up from the ground and rushed toward Mu Enli frantically. Boom! Dad! Mu Qinghai shouted crazily, but he stopped subconsciously. He saw that the pistol in Mu Enli's hand was hit by something at this time and fell directly on the deck. Mu Enli grabbed his wrist in surprise, showing a trace of confusion. Captain Mu Enli, our interrogation is very civilized. Ali walked out calmly, holding her small black pistol in her left hand. she said calmly. Especially for the elderly, the treatment will be better. You follow me? Mu Qinghai said in a panic at this time. Ali said blankly, if I didn't deliberately send people away, would you be able to walk away so easily? What do you want to do? Mu Inli frowned at this time. You just heard it all. Ali suddenly said, Mu Inli, how about we make a deal in private? Say it. I can pretend that I didn't hear what you said just now. Ali said calmly, my mission is just to find King and bring back the case. As for Qian Guiyang's death, for a foreign agent, no matter who killed him, in a sense, is a good thing for the country. Mu Qinghai, I can contribute a little to the political review, but you must cooperate with me. Don't think about seeking death. Also, restore the original plan of the shipyard company 30 years ago and report all the information of the mysterious guys who looked for you in detail. The more detailed, the better. Of course, these will be done in private. We promise that it will not affect Mu Qinghai's daily life. I promise you. Mu Inli suddenly nodded. Dad, Mu Qinghai wanted to say something. But Mu Inli shook his head, took a deep breath, and said softly, let's return. Sister Ali's marksmanship is actually more accurate than Uncle Ma's. Boss Luo took off his mask. The deck where the Bayou cruise ship's steam whistle was located was already empty. Master, I found the thing. Luochio turned around and looked at Yuyi. The servant girl was holding a wet, old leather box in her hands, standing against the wind. Chapter 586. Can you stop eating? Fei Ying looked at Li Zi. To be honest, he really admired this petite girl, and he admired this girl's bag even more. It was like a bottomless pit that could put so many snacks. Because it's boring to be held hostage by you, Li Zi said truthfully. Aren't you afraid at all? Fei Ying was stunned for a while before he said, subconsciously. Li Zi blinked and said, you don't really intend to hurt me, do you? You're using the back of the knife. It's not sharp at all, so why should I be afraid? Fei Ying smiled happily and let go of Li Zi. At the same time, he looked at the surrounding environment. It turned out that he had unknowingly come to the cabin at the bottom of the cabin. Fei Ying shook his head and looked at Li Zi. Hey, little girl, it's a pity that you're too young to my taste. Otherwise, I should chase you. But I don't like the uncle type. I'm only 27. Li Zi blinked and said, but the United Nations has announced before that this stage is middle-aged, right? I won't lower myself to your level. Fei Ying glared at Li Zi fiercely, then suddenly pushed Li Zi and said, you go. Anyway, I'm safe. At least I have a tender heart for the fair sex. With that said, Fei Ying jumped down from the iron net passage and landed nimbly on another iron net passage below. You're not going to continue to hold me hostage? Li Zi leaned over and looked down at this time. You'd better drink more milk. Fei Ying waved his hand flirtatiously. Then his palm turned over, and there was a real strawberry-flavored lollipop in his palm. He said proudly, it's better to eat less of this kind of thing. It's stunted. When you grow up, maybe I'll hold you hostage again. When Li Zi was stunned, she subconsciously opened the bag hanging on her body and turned it over quickly. Give it back to me. Fei Ying laughed, unwrapped the lollipop's wrapping paper, and put it into his mouth. In the end, he made a face and ran away. He looked very carefree, but Li Zi lowered her head at this time. Her hair was slightly scattered without wind, and a cold air slowly surrounded her body. I saved this for last. I was reluctant to eat it. Damn it. Die. Above Fei Ying's head, a huge cube of ice 1m times 1m times 1m appeared out of thin air. Fei Ying, who had just sucked the candy, was thinking about how to get away when he felt that something was wrong. He suddenly shuddered, looked around in confusion, and finally raised his head. Holy shit, this doesn't make sense. At this time, the huge ice cube smashed towards Fei Ying without saying a word. At this time, the solid foundation of the gentleman on the beam who had been trained for many years was finally revealed. Fei Ying didn't say anything and directly jumped down from the iron net passage again, based on his intuition. Boom! The huge block of ice directly smashed through the iron net and continued to fall. Fei Ying couldn't land calmly this time. He fell hard on the floor. His left leg was even seriously injured, and it affected a part of his body that was injured earlier. He subconsciously let out a pig-like scream. He saw the huge block of ice falling towards him at this time. Fei Ying didn't even have time to feel despair. He subconsciously closed his eyes. It still doesn't make sense, but he didn't feel the great pain. He just felt a cold that almost made him freeze to death. And he was all over. The block of ice disappeared, and it was replaced by ice water on the ground that was emitting cold air. Fei Ying was drenched by the ice water. His whole body was wet, and his whole body was trembling. His whole body was curled up. He was so cold that he couldn't even speak. Li Zi, Li Zi. On the iron mesh passage above, everyone's voice came. What happened? The loud noise just now. Li Zi. Sister Rin, I'm here. Li Zi waved her hand and greeted. Sir Ma, Ren Xiling and others rushed into the narrow passage at this time, and quickly came to Li Zi's side. Everyone subconsciously looked down and saw Fei Ying falling to the ground and trembling. What happened? Ren Xiling asked in astonishment. Li Zi said pitifully, I don't know. This guy just pushed me and then jumped down from here. Then the passage over there collapsed, and he fell down. But why is there so much water? Sir Ma asked curiously. Li Zi suddenly dropped 2 drops of tears. She threw herself on Ren Xiling and sobbed. Sister Ren, I'm so scared. I'm afraid that I can't see you. Whoa. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Ren Xiling patted Li Zi's back and comforted her. By the way, weren't you nervous just now? Yes, it's okay. Li Zi, don't be afraid. Ma Hao also nodded and then ordered, you guys go down and put all your handcuffs on this guy. Let me hang them on the deck railing. I said, I want to dry this guy. When several police officers climbed down, they were still very cautious. But looking at Fei Ying's almost frozen appearance, there was no way he could resist. They easily captured the gentleman on the beam. Dry anything. Can you? First give me a cup of hot water. Don't worry about him. Take him away. It was a close call. Not only did they rescue the hostage, but they even caught Fei Ying again. Sir Ma was so happy, but no one noticed that a lot of cold water was left from the gap and gradually sank into the floor. Then it fell again and finally wetted the cable interface hidden under the floor. With a sailing history of 30 years, most of the parts on the Bayou cruise, which was about to retire, were aging, not to mention these old-fashioned cable interfaces. Old Ma. He saw Ali from a distance. At the same time, Mu Enli and Mu Qinghai were beside Ali. The father and son were silent, and they both seemed to have a lot on their minds. Officer Ma gave Ali a thumbs up from a distance. She found the old captain so quickly. Her ability was definitely not for show. We are also done. Sir Ma also proudly showed his results, and then pulled Ali to the side. What's the matter with Mu Enli? Can I continue to ask him some questions now? Ali shook her head and said, Old Ma, this matter is over. After going back, you arrest him. I will pick him up. What happened? Ali just shook her head and said softly, you can just treat it as special treatment. Sir Ma frowned, but in the end, he sighed. There were too many things involved, and he was powerless even if he wanted to. Besides, he was facing Ali, so he was even more powerless. If it was another person, he might be able to argue. Okay, I believe you must have a reason. Ma Hao finally sighed. However, at this time, there was a slight vibration on the ship, and then there was a faint sound. What's going on now? It seems to be from a cabin. Mu Qinghai frowned at this time and subconsciously looked at his father, Mu Enli. It's indeed the cabin. Mu Enli looked solemn. In the cabin, there was already a surge of people. A large number of maintenance workers and crew members working here were quickly carrying buckets, and some had already started to connect the high-pressure faucets. Mu Enli pushed the crowd aside and asked loudly, what happened? I don't know. The cooling system suddenly exploded, and there was a fire inside. We don't know the damage at once. Captain, the temperature of the boiler is rising crazily. What should we do? Has the furnace been turned off? Mu Enli asked calmly. Not yet. Go now. Go and turn it off. It's too late to turn it off now. Mu Inley quickly looked at the situation at the scene and then ran down the stairs. All maintenance workers, follow me. The people under you will put out the fire here and untie the cables here as much as possible. Look for the ship's crew. Don't just stand there. Evacuate all the passengers to the deck at the back of the ship first. Prepare the lifeboats and life jackets. Close to the fire, the temperature suddenly became too high. Mu Inley took off his coat. Give me all your strength. Captain, what can we do to help? Officer Ma shouted at the captain. You don't understand the things here. Mu Inley said solemnly. Go and help maintain stability. Officer Ma, you fat guy, it's time to get rid of the fat on your body. Run for your life. Hurry up. Yes. Mahoud straightened up subconsciously and saluted the old captain almost instinctively. Damn it, the captain's appearance at this time even reminded Officer Ma of the officers when he was in school. The police officers hurriedly ran into the ship. Ollie stayed here and had been monitoring Mu Inley and his son. But she found that Mu Inley didn't mean to leave at this time. Instead, he rushed to the front line and had been directing everyone's work. She saw deep fear and worry in this old man. This old man, who seemed calm even when committing suicide, exuded a convincing strength in fear and struggle at this moment. Find a crowbar. It's red from the fire. Captain, it's too hot, don't. It's going to explode if you pry it open. Mu Inley tore his clothes directly, wrapped them around his hands, and grabbed the valve with both hands. Even through the clothes, there was a burst of black smoke. It was a high temperature that ordinary people didn't dare to touch. Mu Inley gritted his teeth, and the veins on his forehead swelled, making a loud, painful sound. Dad! Mu Qinghai looked, gritted his teeth, and grabbed it with both hands. I'll help you. I'll do it too. Captain, I'll do it too. And me. And me. Looking at the crew rushing to Mu Inley's side one by one and grabbing the burning valve at the same time, Ali finally temporarily dispelled the idea of continuing to monitor him and participated in the work of putting out the fire. The old captain could make these people willingly endure the pain that ordinary people couldn't bear. She was not surprised where his momentum that could suppress old Ma came from. This was the prestige of 30 years. Open, open, it's opened. Don't be happy too early. Start to cool down with seawater. Don't relax for a moment. Chapter 587. Later on, of course, they got through the crisis safely, with the efforts of everyone. Sitting at the window of a restaurant with a good view on the Bayou cruise ship, sub-editor Run was typing on her laptop. She had been thinking and typing for a long time. Li Zi brought a plate of sumptuous food and sat opposite Ren Xiling. Sister Ren, are you writing your little book of strange stories that you will use to tell your grandchildren in the future? Ren Xiling shook her head and just looked at the moving seascape outside. Bayou Cruise had resumed sailing, but after setting sail again, the number of tourists was obviously reduced again. Ren Xiling suddenly took out a document at this time and put it in front of Li Zi. Sign it. What is this? A confidentiality agreement given by the Vixen. Ren Xiling said calmly, sign it. If you talk nonsense, there's no place for you in this country. I guess you can't run away for a day with your small body. Just a confidentiality agreement? Li Zi blinked. What else can we do? Ren Xiling rolled her eyes and said, do you want to arrest all of us, old Ma, and the others? Although this Vixen is a Vixen, at least she is a little reluctant to part with him. Li Zi said curiously at this time, Sister Ren, could it be that you and Ms. Ali are actually very good friends? Bah! Ren Xiling spat with a look of disgust. Li Zi giggled, and then looked out of the window. It was almost evening. After tonight, Bayou Cruise would arrive at about 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow. Li Zi suddenly held her chin, and her eyes turned around, and, in fact, this holiday is really good. Agents, treasure, black box, murder case, treasure hunter. Ah, it's so fun. But I don't know how the old captain will be treated. I really hope he can be well. The Vixen has been keeping Mu Inley locked up at this moment. She's probably interested in the investigation. Ren Xiling shook her head. I haven't seen him come out yet. Old Ma said that we shouldn't ask too much about the murder. Forget it. Let's not ask too much. Anyway, there's so many things in this world that are unclear. Let's not be confused. It's really not like you, Sister Ren, Li Zi said in surprise. Ren Xiling looked at the busy crew on the deck and said faintly, "Probably they don't want to know. What are they doing?" Ren Xiling said, "Isn't the Bayou cruise ship going to be retired soon? They were probably preparing for the last celebration. But for this ship to be able to survive, it's probably because there's something protecting it from the dark, right? Luochio and Yu Yi are here." Li Zi looked at the entrance of the restaurant at this time. Ren Xiling was taken aback at this time, then quickly packed up her things. She stood up abruptly, clenched her fists, and gave herself a cheering action. Then, she walked toward the beverage area like a soldier who had finished his apprenticeship. Sigh, here they are again. They really don't give up. Li Zi shook her head. After a while, Boss Luo and Yu Yi had arrived. Li Zi glanced at the two and sighed that these two were so leisurely all the time. Probably in the whole incident, these two were the most comfortable, right? Perhaps as Ren Xiling said, it's better not to know, right? Li Zi smiled slightly. "Miss Li Zi," Yu Yi greeted softly. "Sit down." Li Zi waved her hand and said, "But I'll eat first." Luochio just smiled simply. After pulling out a chair for Yu Yi, they sat down one after another. "You're here too." Annie Ren was holding a tray at this time and brought 3 cups of drinks, just in time. "Drink something to refresh yourself first." "Yu Yi, this is yours." "Kid, this is yours." Looking at the yellow-orange liquid in front of him, Luochio asked indifferently, "What is this?" "Mango juice." "Can't you tell?" Ren Xiling rolled her eyes and said, "Why do you look so disgusted? Are you afraid that I'll put poison in it? Look at how obedient Yu Yi is. She knows how to thank me." Boss Luo nodded and simply reached out to take it. This time, then, "Wow, mango juice. This is good. I like it." This was a voice that everyone was familiar with. Then, a fat hand stretched out of thin air, picked up the cup and drank it without saying anything. In the end, he continued to burp. "Sir Ma, the taste is really good. Xiling, is it over there? I'll have another cup." Ma Hao sighed. "After a busy day, I'm dying of thirst." "It's really, Xiling, what's wrong with you? You don't look right." "Ma, ho, duh." Ren Xiling put her hands on Sir Ma's shoulders and looked up like a ghost. "You're dead. What's wrong with this?" Sir Ma shuddered subconsciously. He always felt that something was wrong. This was a dinner that Sir Ma always felt cold on his back. Closing the recruitment booklet and turning off the recording studio on the table, Ali stood up and opened the curtains in the old captain's room. "We will continue to follow up on these matters later," Ali said calmly, "but you have to stay here." In addition to the old captain, there was even Mu Qinghai here. Ali turned around and leaned against the window. She looked at the two and said, "You don't have to look like this. Muenli, strictly speaking, you don't really have a big sin. Moreover, you were able to stop this black box back then. It was considered the right thing to do. Now that you have taken the initiative to hand it over, I will apply to deal with you at my discretion when I go back." "Whatever." Mu Enli shook his head slightly. "As for you, Mu Qinghai, I can't give you a definite answer about your treatment now." Ali said seriously, "There should be other people following up on you in the future. However, as long as you don't make any mistakes, at least we won't continue to embarrass you." Mu Qinghai nodded silently and suddenly said, Can I still see my father in the future?" The old captain trembled slightly. Ali thought for a while and said, "Don't think of us as so cold-blooded. If the application is approved, you can still meet him." Mu Qinghai breathed a sigh of relief. Ali looked at the time at this time and suddenly said, "There are still 12 hours before tomorrow's arrival. You can move freely for the time being. Of course, it is under my sight. Especially the captain. You can't be within 5 meters of me." The two looked at Ali in amazement at the same time. Ali suddenly smiled slightly, like a caring big sister, and said softly, "Go, those crew members are waiting for you to drink with them." Although the tourists were very dissatisfied because of many things, most of the crew members on the ship were not good. The crew members didn't care at all. Tomorrow's arrival would also announce the official retirement of the Bayou cruise ship. For this reason, almost all the crew members, except for those who had to stay at their posts, came to the deck. They brought in many tables and laid out a sumptuous spread of food. Of course, there were bottles of good wine. For them who were at sea, what could compare to a joyous reunion at the last moment? The crew members from all over the world began to show off their unique skills. The old captain sat in the middle of the crowd and laughed with everyone. His collection had been moved out long ago, and now it was in everyone's stomach. Mu Qinghai silently accompanied the old captain. He knew that this might be the last company. It would be difficult to find such an opportunity in the future. Mu Enli laughed, and the seriousness on his face disappeared. He gave Mu Qinghai a bottle of old wine, but Mu Qinghai still shook his head. The old captain didn't mind. Mu Qinghai suddenly said at this time, "Dad, why did you adopt me?" Mu Enli just patted Mu Qinghai's palm and looked up at the Big Dipper in the sky. "I think it's probably because you are a gift from God. Dad, I really can't just pretend that nothing happened." Mu Qinghai clenched his fists. "Just think of me as selfish." Looking at Mu Qinghai's heavy face, Mu Enli suddenly stood up, lifted the hat on Mu Qinghai's head, then took off his own hat and put on him. "Dad, remember," Mu Enli said with a sullen face, "you are my continuation. Even if you are immature, even if you're not qualified, you are still my child. In the future, you will be the best captain. Even if you're not on Bayou Cruise, you will be the best one. I got it. I won't let you down." A firm gaze. "Brother, don't be in a daze. Come here. Let these guys see who is the real magnanimous. Who dares to challenge me?" Mu Enli laughed at this time and walked boldly toward the crowd, singing and dancing. This was the day that belonged to Mu Enli. It was the last period of his era. Ali leaned on the side and enjoyed the sea breeze, quietly watching this scene. She held a glass of fruit wine, and her eyes were a little intoxicated. Among the crowd, the old captain directly grabbed a big bottle and gulped it down. He held the doctor's arm, and the two spun, kicked their legs, and sang a song. This was what he learned at sea before, and later brought to this ship. He said that this was how a sailor should be. Although a sailor was a thing of the past, he was still a sailor. The old captain's eyes unexpectedly saw the boss who gave him this time between the railings of the upper deck and laughed. Boss Luo raised his glass to the old captain and disappeared into the night. The old captain also knew that his time was running out. As for the things that he promised Ali, he would treat it as his last cunning. He was in the Navy, killed pirates, and was on Bayou Cruise for 30 years. When he came to the end of his life, his vision was still clear. This woman who came with a mission was actually a really good woman. "Who dares to challenge me?" The old captain laughed again. Ali had been observing Mu Enli's actions. At this time, she looked curiously at the place where he was looking, but she did not see anything. She frowned slightly and did not care. She stroked her hair, then reached out and took the cherries in the cup. Her hand stretched out of the railing, and the little cherries spun gently. Fei Ying, who was really salted by Sirma, raised his head hungrily at this time, opened his mouth, and stuck out his tongue like a dog wagging its tail. Fei Ying couldn't remember how long it had been since he had eaten or even drunk water. After Ali spun the cherries a few times, she suddenly opened her sexy lips, swallowed them, and then licked her fingers slightly. It was like teasing a pet. Fei Ying shuddered. Devil. Chapter 588. Woo 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 woo. They heard this loud whistle again. Naturally, it was at the original location when they set off. Bayou Cruise ship had docked, and it was half an hour earlier than the scheduled time. The sky had just lit up, and the dock was sprinkled with golden light. However, this did not stop the enthusiasm of the tourists to get off the ship, or rather, they couldn't wait to get off the ship. They had already packed their things early. Before the ship entered the port, they had already come to the disembarkation area to wait. Of course, there were discussions and complaints about this terrible Golden Week holiday. After the tourists had almost left, a few police cars drove into the dock. They were driven here to arrest Mu Enli. "Ma, Sir Ma, are you okay?" On the ship, Lin Feng hesitantly looked at Ma Hao's appearance at this time. What does he look like? Officer Ma was being supported by Mrs. Ma at this time. He also pressed his waist with one hand. His legs were trembling, and he looked like he was moving arduously step by step. Mrs. Ma's face was quite good. Quite good. "No, I'm fine." Ma Hao stammered. "I just ate something wrong last night and had a stomachache. Don't look at me." Take Muenli away. By the way, take that Fang away too. Yes. Mrs. Ma helped Ma how to the stairs to get off the ship. Old Ma, can you do it? I told you not to be so fierce, you bastard. What could Sir Ma do? He was also desperate. God knows why he couldn't control himself last night. I didn't eat oysters. I can't take it anymore. My kidneys hurt. Mrs. Ma suddenly exclaimed, Old Ma, be careful. Sir Ma was taken aback. What? Sir Ma didn't pay attention and stepped on the stairs. He rolled down. Mrs. Ma was shocked and quickly ran down. On the ship, Ren Xiling, who was about to get off the ship, saw this scene. She sneered coldly and said, This guy, he obviously sunned Fang and assaulted fish, but he still got off the ship on his stomach. He is really unprofessional. By the way, Lizzie, those drugs seem to be really fierce. Give me some more. Okay. But Lizzie had a feeling that it would not succeed. Hey, big sister Ren, who is that woman? Lizzie glanced forward. Ren Xiling subconsciously looked over, only to see a woman with a headscarf, sunglasses, and a trench coat walking towards Luochio and Yu Yi. This feeling is a vixen. Ren Xiling was shocked. Little brother, we meet again. Miss Muzi. Luochio followed the voice and nodded at her. You haven't disembarked yet? I was a little late to pack my luggage. I said that you could just call me Big Sister. Why are you still so formal? Madame Muzi smiled faintly. She looked behind Luochio and saw Ren Xiling charging at her menacingly. Suddenly, she said softly, Have you been scared over the past few days, little brother? Luochio shook his head and said, Nothing, by the way. Boss Luo glanced at Miss Maid at this time. Miss Maid took out a chain of shells from her luggage. This is for me, Luochio said softly. Just take it as a return gift. After all, Miss Muzi also gave me a very good bracelet. But it's not a precious thing. It's just a shell I picked up on the island. I hope you don't mind. Of course not. Madame Muzi grabbed the handmade shell necklace and said softly, I will cherish it. As she said, she looked at Ren Xiling, who was approaching. She suddenly stepped forward and kissed Boss Luo's face gently. Then she said softly, See you again if fate wills it. Besides, your little girlfriend won't eat the wrong thing, right? Miss May just smiled. Not to mention the real identity of Miss Muzi. This kind of kissing etiquette was just a kind of etiquette in Miss Maid's opinion. It was nothing serious. But sub-editor Run, Annie Run, was like a stone at this time. She was motionless, but her body was trembling slightly. Looking at Ren Xiling's clenched fists, Lizzie imagined in horror. If Sister Run is also a monster, will her demon power explode? Will she be furious? Sister Ren, you have to hold back. Don't be excited. Luochio knows a Li's identity. Lizzie quickly whispered, Don't expose it. I'm already enduring it. Madame Muzi pulled the suitcase and walked past Ren Xiling with a smile. She chuckled and said, You've been hogging it for so many years. It's not too much for me to kiss you, right? She walked up the stairs to get off the boat lightly. Vixen. Ren Xiling watched Ali leave and muttered bitterly, For so many years, I don't have a shell necklace. What necklace? Luochio walked up and asked curiously. Ren Xiling snorted coldly and looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Luochio shook his head and said calmly, I don't have a necklace. Take this. It's also picked up. With that said, a red peony treasure snail was given to Auntie Ren. Auntie Ren rolled her eyes at this time. Don't think that a broken shell can send me away. Then give it back to me. Auntie Ren greeted Boss Luo with a third finger, then put her arm around Lizzie's shoulder. Lizzie, let's go. Mu Enli looked at Bayou Cruz silently. He had already disembarked, and Ma Haud and others were accompanying him. Sir Ma did not urge the old captain to leave immediately, but whispered, Brother, didn't you ask someone to send you off? Mu Enli shook his head. I asked them not to send me off. This is good enough. Take another look. Take another look. Then let's go. No hurry. Ma Haud sighed. For Ma Haud, the captain was indeed an admirable person for getting rid of the black box. Ma Haud suddenly smiled and said, Brother, in fact, I also applied for a repairman job back then. With that said, Sir Ma leaned to the old captain's side and lowered his voice. I also came for the treasure that you made up. Mu Enli was taken aback and then smiled. Okay, take me away. That lady should have waited for a long time. Sir Ma patted Mu Inley's shoulder. They turned and walked toward the police. When they were about to get on the bus, the Bayou cruise ship's whistle sounded again. It sounded one after another, as if it was a sad cry. The old captain's body trembled, and he turned around subconsciously. He looked at the whistle and saw that on Bayou cruise ship, there was a sudden surge of people. The crew members ran from all over to the corridor on the side of the shore. Mu Inley subconsciously magnified his gaze. He saw Mu Qinghai, the doctor, the crew members, and the chef in the restaurant. You all. Everyone stood in line at this time. A crew member straightened his collar and straightened his back towards the old captain. Mu Qinghai wore the old captain's hat at this time and stood among the crowd. He raised the loudspeaker in his hand, took a deep breath, and said in a loud voice, 30 years. There is only one captain on Bayou cruise ship. Comrade Mu Inley, your spirit, your contribution to Bayou cruise ship, and your care for every employee on board will always be remembered in our hearts. Now, you are officially retired. You have succeeded and retired. Just doing unnecessary things. Mu Inley frowned and muttered softly, but he did not blink. He couldn't blink. He didn't know how to blink. He was reluctant to blink. He didn't want to blink. Mu Qinghai straightened his chest, and his voice became louder. It was vigorous and heavy. He looked straight ahead and shouted again, Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. This was the most respectful and heaviest words a son could say to his father. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Everyone shouted in unison. Their voices echoed over and over again on the dock for a long time. Salute. With Mu Qinghai's command again, everyone on the deck corridor raised their hands neatly towards the old captain. At this time, Mu Qinghai took out a small steel wine pot from his clothes, unscrewed it, raised his head, and took a sip. Then he saluted again. Mu Inley looked at this scene expressionlessly. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand and did not speak. He sat directly in the police car and said calmly, Let's go. But the voices were still there. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Congratulations to Captain Mu Inley for his smooth retirement. Captain, we can't bear to part with you. Captain, goodbye. Captain, Captain. The police car left, but the shouting did not stop. Mahoud looked at the dock that was gradually fading away outside the window and sighed. Brother, your heart is too hard. He looked at the old captain sitting next to him. At this time, he realized that Mu Inley had shed 2 lines of tears at this time. Officer Ma, can you not look at me? Even if there were 2 lines of tears, the old captain's voice was not hoarse. It was as loud as the whistle of Bayou cruise ship. But where was his heart hard? Chapter 589. Given that too many things happened during the last voyage of Bayou cruise ship, the cruise company had to refund all the passengers' travel expenses. This was the last day of the Golden Week. Sir Ma was still in a daze. He was playing Minesweeper in the office. It seemed that he had not been so idle for a while. It was not his turn to intervene in the old captain's affairs. After bringing Mu Inley back on the return voyage that day, Ali took him away in the afternoon. Of course, there were 2 other men with a strong, murderous aura accompanying him. They were probably people of the same nature as Ali, right? Basically, everyone was given a gag order. As for the old captain, he was probably brought to the capital by now, right? Sir Ma. Lin Feng knocked on the door and came in as usual, and then began to report some unimportant things. The lazy atmosphere was like the sun shining on the windowsill. As he listened, Ma Haod yawned and suddenly remembered something. By the way, how is Fei Ying now? He's still locked in the detention room. Lin Feng said helplessly, This guy is really stubborn. He doesn't say anything. He boarded the ship with a fake ID. We are still interrogating him every day. To deal with this kind of person, you can't use force. Sir Ma yawned again. Didn't you catch 2 big shots before the holiday? Lock them up together. Let the air conditioner be as cold as possible. Serve cold rice, cold dishes, and cold tea in turn. Oh yes, don't give them toilet paper. I, I got it. Lin Feng swallowed his saliva. This was not considered using force. In the capital, an old Hutong residence. Qingtian's sunshine scattered in the old yard. It was a rare good weather. Mu Enli was sitting in the yard with a light blanket on his body. Ali brought a cup of hot tea at this time and placed it on the small round table next to him. You seem to be in a good mood today. Are you used to living here? Mu Enli slowly opened his eyes at this time. He took a sip of the hot tea and said calmly, compared to that time, this is heaven. Ali says seriously, Mr. Mu, thank you for your cooperation this time. The information you helped us verify the day before yesterday was very useful. After comparing the information, the mysterious people who sent you that year have been matched. Fortunately, one of them is still alive. We already have colleagues following up on this. Mu Enli suddenly frowned. You suspect that there is more than one box. Ali said indifferently. Investment will also spread the risk. There are a few cruise ships in the country that are imported from that company, so we have to be careful. After all, not every box will meet someone like you who is willing to cooperate. Mu Enli gave a soft hum, then closed his eyes again. He suddenly said softly, I don't have much time. I hope you can become better. Ali frowned. She was a little puzzled by Mu Enli's words. Old Master Mu, we have found a doctor check on you. Your body is very healthy. Why do you say that? Are you worried that the foreigners will harm you? Don't worry, you're absolutely safe here. Miss Ali, I'm a little sleepy, Mu Enli said slowly. After a while, there was a slight sound of breathing. Ali looked at the old man lying in the rocking chair for a while, then helped him pull up the blanket and return to the house. She still had a long report to complete. Of course, Mu Enli was not the only one in the yard. There was another man guarding, but he was sitting in an inconspicuous place. Ali sat in front of the window of the room and turned on the computer. She could also see Mu Enli here, but she could only see his back. The autumn wind blew. Ali subconsciously rubbed her fingers and felt a little cold. She didn't know that the old man in the courtyard at this time slightly narrowed his eyes, and the hands under the blanket fingers at this time were stroking an old pocket watch over and over again. Mu Enli's eyes gradually dimmed. He felt that his heartbeat was also slowing down. He could even feel the faint heartbeat for a while. He didn't feel any pain. It was just that his eyes became hazy. Everything around him seemed to have melted and turned into white. Only a figure stood in front of him. You finally came to pick me up, Mu Enli said softly, then lowered his head and closed his eyes. Time passed, and the autumn wind came again, blowing the fallen leaves in the yard. Creak, 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 creak. The autumn was also strong. Ali subconsciously looked up at the window and looked at the old man, who didn't move. She took a sip of hot tea and immersed herself in work again. The yard was so quiet that she could hardly hear any sound. Until she didn't know when, the figure of the club's boss Luo came to the yard. For Luocchio, it was time for Mu Enli to hand over the payment. This boss had not been the club owner for a long time, but he had made many transactions. He was already very proficient in this operation. After taking out Mu Enli's soul from his body, Boss Luo did not rush to leave. Instead, he lifted the blanket and took the pocket watch from Mu Enli's hands. Luocchio opened it and took a look. Although it was old, it was very delicate. Luocchio thought for a while. Looking at Mu Enli's now empty body, he suddenly stretched out his hand, cut off a strand of the old captain's hair, and wrapped it in a handkerchief. The boss finally glanced at the woman who was working by the window, smiled slightly, and disappeared from the yard. Seashell Island. Without needing to pay much lifespan, Boss Luo had already returned to this place. In fact, the club's new boss had basically been in a state of surplus. Naturally, he would not care about the consumption of Weibo. The coordinates were below the small soil slope where a few old trees were located. When Luocchio arrived, Yi was already waiting here. The entrance to the small cave had even been cleaned up by Miss Maid. Moreover, Miss Maid, who always had her own hobby, even lined up a lot of candles on the way through the cave. They were aromatherapy candles. Luocchio stretched out his palm, and a slightly white ball of light emerged from his palm. Luocchio smiled at Yi and walked into the cave. Boss Luo walked while looking at the ball of light in his hand and whispered, "A long time ago, there was a retired Marine. After retirement, his life was not very satisfactory. The ball of light trembled slightly. Boss Luo's voice continued to sound in the cave. It was plain but clear. Later, he got the opportunity to change all this. For this Marine, this opportunity was too rare. Why didn't he accept it? Later, he changed his life and became the captain. But the captain was still too naive. How could those who ordered him be at ease with him alone? So, the person in charge of monitoring came. The ball of light vibrated violently. The person in charge of monitoring has always lived by the captain's side and is very loyal to his duties. Compared to the half-baked captain, the monitor can be said to be a real professional. Why? Of course, because the monitor was trained from an early age and even brainwashed education. The ball of light seemed to want to break out of the palm, but it was always powerless. The captain lived in fear every day, but his luck seemed to have come. Those people were purged because of political relations. For the captain, this was the best news he could get. But the question is, how is he going to deal with the monitor? Kill her? This is a bit difficult. But let her go? The captain was never at ease, and the captain found that the monitor's behavior began to become abnormal. Why? The monitor is also a pitiful person. She was trained from an early age, and loyalty became the only meaning of the monitor's existence. And now, the object of loyalty suddenly disappeared. So, what is the meaning of existence? The monitor is still doing her job, as usual, no matter day or night, and it's getting worse. The white ball of light suddenly became pale, and even began to turn gray, and gradually stopped moving. The captain even had no way to control the monitor's actions. She began to walk around the ship, and sometimes even wailed. Gradually, rumors of ghosts began to spread on the ship. In desperation, the captain had to seize an opportunity to completely imprison the monitor. But the captain still tried to persuade the monitor, telling her that the matter was over. So the captain later thought of another way. That was to spread the legend of the treasure on the ship. He wanted to let the monitor know whether the object of the monitor's loyalty had taken action after such a rumor. The result was in the direction the captain wanted. The other party did not take any action. Everything seemed to be covered up and disappeared. The watcher went crazy and began to babble nonsense. The captain didn't even dare to let her go, because he didn't know what she would say if she went mad, or even what she would do. But it did not seem to be a solution to keep her imprisoned. It was completely gray. Chapter 590. To be precise, Mu Inli didn't think that he really had the qualifications to be a good captain. Even if he used to be in the Navy and had the title of an engineer, he was too young after all. He didn't even know how to manage the many employees on this ship, even though he had returned to the motherland that he had never met, and even though the people around him were people with the same skin color as him. But Mu Inli had to admit one thing. That was, the cultural differences between the two different societies were too great. Seagulls flew low over the place where the whistle sounded. On a summer evening, Mu Inli stayed alone somewhere on the cruise ship. He took off his hat, leaned on the railing, and felt extremely tired. He secretly drank alone. Soon after, a figure climbed up very agilely, wearing an ordinary crew's uniform, lowered her head, and walked towards Mu Inli. Mu Inli, why is the route repeated this time? We should take as many different routes as possible so that we can explore more areas. Here it comes again. Here it comes again. Mu Inli silently looked at the watcher who was walking towards him. He didn't understand. Why doesn't this woman understand? Or is she just pretending to be asleep, and I will never be able to wake up a person who is pretending to be asleep? Mu Inli didn't know what country this watcher should be from. The only thing he knew was that she was obviously Asian. Her name, code name, Yuna. What about the code name? I also have a temporary code name called King, right? Mu Inli suddenly laughed at himself. The hat that Yuna wore wrapped her hair well. From a distance, she probably looked like a relatively thin crew member. But Mu Inli knew that no one on this ship could call out her name except for him, because she had always occupied his bedroom. Of course, for the sake of convenience, the two of them were considered to be living together. Yuna was waiting for the day when the mission was completed. The mysterious people who ordered her at the beginning required at least 2 years of data. Now, almost a year had passed. Logically speaking, Mu Inli might be free in another year, if there were no accidents. Yes, if there were no accidents. However, in the past 3 months, Yuna had not been able to contact those mysterious fellows, and she had gradually started to become abnormal. The flight route has already been arranged. Even if it's me, I can't just change it. Mu Inli looked at Yuna's eyes and frowned. Didn't I tell you not to come out randomly? What if we're discovered? Are you afraid that I'll create another legend about ghosts? Yuna's expression was calm. Don't worry. I've already adjusted and recovered. I won't do such a stupid thing again. Because yesterday I contacted the headquarters again. Mu Inli, we can continue with the characters. Yesterday, you were just talking to yourself the whole night. Normal? I'm afraid it's getting worse, right? Is the brainwashing of those people really so terrifying? Mu Inli even looked at the woman who lived in his imagination with some pity. He didn't understand the meaning of this woman's existence. Yuna, what is the most important thing to you? Mu Inli looked at the sea that was dyed red and suddenly asked. Yuna didn't say anything and said firmly, complete the mission. Mu Inli suddenly felt a little irritated. Perhaps it was the influence of alcohol, or perhaps it was because he lived in a straightforward society for the first half of his life. He suddenly grabbed Yuna's arms and kissed her lips fiercely. Yuna angrily bit Mu Inli's lips and pushed him away. Her face was cold. I'm here to assist you, not to seduce you. Mu Inli, if you dare to harass me again, don't blame me for being rude. Mu Inli wiped his lips and laughed. Aren't you also a woman? Ha ha ha. Yuna snorted coldly and turned away. Mu Inli shook his head and lay directly on the deck. He covered his face with his hat and hummed a tune casually. It seems that, even if I'm back, I'm not as unrestrained as before. What's the point of coming back? Mu Inli thought of another way, a way to wake Yuna up from her imagination. You see, this is an internal document sent by the shipyard company. It has already stated that there is no treasure on board. In addition, those people still don't have any orders. You are crazy. You actually did this kind of thing? What if you are exposed? Yuna looked at Mu Inli like an enraged female cat and tore the document directly. You really won't give up. If you have the ability, you can contact your so-called headquarters now. Mu Inli shook his head. Yuna said nothing and took out a leather suitcase from under the bed. After opening it, there was a set of communication equipment inside. Yuna took out a separate communicator and put it on her face, calling serial number CG10. Yuna? Yes, I am Yuna. Regarding this incident, I want to report. Yes, this incident. Mu Inli turned the leather suitcase over, took out the device, and said angrily, the battery ran out long ago. Who are you talking to? Yuna just glanced at Mu Inli hatefully, then hurriedly gathered all the scattered things around her. Then, she said to the communicator again, Headquarters, I heard you. The signal here is not good. Please wait a moment. Is it done? Yes, I will continue to report. Crazy. You are really crazy. Yes. Mu Inli has rebelled. Got it. I will eliminate it immediately. What do you want to do? Yuna stood up and suddenly rushed toward Mu Inli. He spent a lot of effort, and even had a deep wound on his arm that showed the bone, before he was barely able to subdue the Watcher. This was also thanks to his many years of experience in the military. In a separate bathroom in a bedroom, her mouth was locked, and there were a lot of sponges here to prevent Yuna from going crazy. But even so, Yuna's body was still scarred. If it weren't for Mu Inli playing some music loudly in his room every night, the movement would be discovered by the people outside. This is the newly released tranquilizer. Take it. Mu Inli pinched Yuna's chin and stuffed the pill into her mouth from the gap. It has been 2 weeks, right? He gave her a lot of sedative drugs that could be bought, but except for making her groggy most of the time, it didn't seem to have any effect. Mu Inli, let me go. Let's continue to complete the mission. They won't blame you. Mu Inli. Yuna's eyes lost focus, and she lay on the cold floor. Mu Inli slammed the door in annoyance, sat on the bed by himself, and covered his face with both hands. He could no longer stand Yuna's madness. He began to grab a bottle of liquor and gulped it down. Then, he turned on the room stereo and amplified the sound to the maximum. Only in this way could he barely fall asleep. Day by day, no matter how noisy the environment was, he seemed to be able to hear Yuna talking to him. Finally, alcohol could no longer block the voice that lingered in his mind. One night, Muinli fell under his bed like mud. He got up with a splitting headache. Days of insomnia and fatigue made him nervous to the extreme. He picked up the fruit knife from the room, held the liquor bottle in one hand, and took another big gulp. Then he dragged his body, approached step by step, and opened the bathroom door. Looking at the half-asleep woman in the bathroom with a numb face, he lowered his head and showed the knife in his hand. He said in his sleep, "I gave you a chance. I gave you a lot of chances. I even thought a lot of ways, but why don't you wake up? Why? Why? Why?" With a sudden roar, he grabbed Yuna's hair with one hand, pulled her up, and submerged her upper body into the bathtub. Yuna's head was completely submerged in the water, and she instinctively struggled in pain. "Wake up! Wake up!" He lifted Yuna's head again. The wet hair was completely stuck together. Yuna coughed painfully, gasped, and looked at him indifferently. "Look at you. Do you still look like a human? You don't look like a human. You are just a puppet. For you, what is the most important thing?" Yuna suddenly said, "I have my new life. I have my new future. I have my life. I have everything. What do you have?" "I have the meaning of my life." "You don't." Mu Inli yelled angrily, and the knife in his hand stabbed down toward Yuna. The sharp knife cut the skin on Yuna's arm in an instant, and the blood suddenly dyed the water in the bathtub red. Mu Inli's eyes widened, and his face was ferocious. "You can lie to me. You can say that you are normal. Yuna, don't think about the mission. You are free. Live your own life again. Don't force me to kill you." Coward. Finally, his nerves were stimulated to the extreme. In this bathroom, the ugliest, most evil, and most despicable thing happened. The young captain of Bayou cruise ship raped the equally young Yuna. He covered her mouth and penetrated her body again and again. His eyes and hers were not even more than 10 centimeters away from beginning to end. Over and over again, he was like a hungry wolf who was grabbing a rotten corpse, and she was like a shell that had lost her soul. This was like a silent hell of a mirror of retribution. This mirror of retribution continued. He had completely degenerated into a demon. Every night, he would get drunk and then open this place full of evil, venting the ugliness hidden in his body over and over again. This was like a nightmare, a never-ending, buried deep in the heart, the ugliest nightmare. They had been peeled off layer by layer and then dug out again and again. These were things that had been faded in the memory. Finally, an old palm completely crushed them. As if breaking through from one latitude to another, this old palm tore the world in the memory forcefully. It stirred, continued to tear, and continued to stir, as if it couldn't wait to completely knead them into a ball. But in the end, they unfolded again, forming a ring, and kept rotating, this mirror of retribution. Here, what is this place? The place in the deepest part of your memory. My life has come to an end. Why do I have to face this again? Isn't my shame enough? What did you see? The ugliest me. What else? Yuna, who hates me. The memory fragments rotated again, and the mirror of retribution opened in front of him again. He couldn't bear this pain, and he had to cover his ears with both hands, until the sound of a newborn crying could be heard. He raised his head again. In this world that was pieced together from nothing by memory fragments, he finally saw the boss who gave him the last time. The boss reached out and grabbed a fragment from the countless fragments. In the ball-like memory fragments, a child who had just come to this world and had yet to open his eyes made his first sound. The boss sent this fragment to Mu Inli, so what you see now? His hands trembled slightly, like a lost traveler in the desert, piously waiting for the rain to fall in front of him. My child. You and Yuna's child. Yes, me and her child. Captain, look at these memories of yours again. Luochio said softly. Now, if you look back at your life, you should be able to feel it. Mu Inli subconsciously looked at those sinful memories. Yuna was sitting in front of the window, her hands on her protruding belly, silent. Next to her, the young captain was talking nonstop. At this time, Yuna did not struggle, but she never said a word to me, no matter what method I used. I just want to make up for the mistakes I had made. On another fragment, the woman lowered her head and gently stroked the child in her belly. There was a rare smile. The young captain next to her was watching in a daze. She still refused to talk to me. I know she never forgave me, but I saw the brilliance of motherhood on her face. It was too sacred. In front of her, I was like the most humble sinner. Another piece of debris. She began to make clothes for children quietly. But as soon as I came back, she would hide things. Pieces by pieces, he began to carefully face the most despicable thing that had been buried bit by bit. Premature birth. The thing I was most worried about finally happened. I was going to take the risk and send her to the hospital anyway. I even arranged it, but in the end, she was still born prematurely. Una exhausted her last strength and gave birth to this sinful child. When a young captain reacted, it was life and death. Finally, the old man looked at the memory of blood, sin, and life in a daze. The young man held the newborn child in grief and knelt by the bed, and the woman closed her eyes forever. Una, why did she smile like this? Did she have it that time? The old man looked at the boss blankly. Captain, this is your memory. There is no mistake. So naturally it exists. Luaccio said indifferently. Now, what do you see? The old man finally embraced all the memory fragments into his arms. Suddenly, he smiled bitterly. I gave her a reason to live. When I had the intention to kill for the first time, she even hoped that I could really kill her. She was in too much pain after all. You are right. I can only understand it when I look back. The old captain's eyes gradually returned to calmness. It's just that I didn't dare to look at them. But the sin can't be removed. Yes, I've never thought of cleansing myself of my sins. In the end, I've just been relieved. Is it good? It's enough. It's enough. 2 streams of clear tears flowed down the aged man's cheeks as he softly said, I actually miss this smile of hers. Being able to see it again is already enough. It's good that you're satisfied. In the cave, Boss Luo suddenly released the shackles in his palm, giving the completely dark light ball a chance to escape. It was just a spiritual body. The dark light slowly sank in front of the tomb, and then it had a form. The old captain finally came to the tomb again in the form of a spiritual body. The dark gray substance gradually began to dissipate. The boss took out a handkerchief and buried a bundle of hair in front of the simple tombstone. It finally returned to its pure, white appearance again, shining brightly. The servant girl carried an old leather box behind Luaccio and put it aside before returning to her master's side. There are no gold, silver, or jewelry in this box, but some simple old things. Some baby clothes, milk bottles for feeding the baby, small toys, small seashells, and other small objects. These are things that were truly valuable to a father. Sir, this is your treasure. I have also returned it here. Luaccio said softly. You said that you hope to be buried here. Your last wish has been fulfilled. The white light ball slowly rose from the ground, as if it had been washed by running water for thousands of years, and finally fell into the boss's palm. Do you think I'm always doing boring things? Sitting in front of the beach of the seashell island, the seawater was almost enough to reach Luaccio's side, but on the wet sand, Miss Maid was barefoot, facing the sea breeze. Hearing the master's words, Yi turned around and smiled. The main thing is the master's wish, so there is nothing boring. Luaccio thought for a while and said, Old boss, how long did it take for you to obliterate all your feelings? Yi doesn't know. Miss Maid whispered, but since the moment I woke up, the previous boss was already like this. Boss Luo suddenly remembered some words said by Black Soul number 9. He looked at Yi and said indifferently, I found that. It seems to be unable to peel me off. The altar? Miss Maid smiled slightly. Luaccio shook his head and then nodded. It was so complicated that even Miss Maid, a puppet with more than 300 years of history, couldn't completely understand it. Boss Luo finally said thoughtfully, Maybe it's just an illusion, but at least I feel that my direction is not wrong, as long as it complies with the rules. Master, what did you just say? Miss Maid cast a puzzled look at him. Yuyi didn't seem to hear it. Luaccio gave a start. With Yuya's ability, It was impossible that she couldn't hear his voice, so there was only one possibility. Even Yi wasn't qualified to listen to the conversation between you and me. Luochio looked at the edge of the sky. A strong feeling of loneliness slowly crept into his heart. His consciousness seemed to be pulled out in an instant, and the island in front of him began to shrink rapidly. The sea, the earth, the sky, everything began to shrink. In the end, there was only a naturally rotating world in front of him. At this time, he seemed to be able to see countless creatures in this world. Even in this self-rotating world, there were many distorted places. They were entangled with the rotation of the world and rotated separately. A thought covered all of this. At the same time, in a cave on a mountain peak in the distant Jerusalem, a white-haired old man slowly walked out. With every step he took, it was as if he was trying to squeeze out all of his remaining life force. It was extremely difficult for him to do so. The old man stood in front of the cave and stared at the sky for a long time before he slowly sighed and muttered to himself, "Too fast. You're too fast. But that's good, that's good, that's good." The old man returned to the cave again. There was nothing here except an old music box in front of the stone bed. The old man opened it. Hearing the crisp voice, he felt as if he was dreaming. If only I could have taken this path back then. How great would that have been? In front of the beach, Yuye's voice came into Luochio's ears again, making his consciousness fall into countless layers and finally return to his body. The sound of the rushing seawater and the sound of the wind once again became tangible. "Master, what happened?" Yuye looked at Luochio with a little horror. Luochio shook his head and stood up with a smile. "Nothing. I just thought of something and was a little absent-minded." Miss Servant Girl cast a doubtful look again. Luochio just chuckled. "I'm thinking of doing another boring thing." With that, Luochio turned around and stared at the forest on the island. His body flew up at this time. Miss Servant Girl's body was also lifted up by something and followed Luochio. In the sky, a huge cloud began to form, blocking the entire island. At 100 meters above sea level, Luochio stretched out his hand and pressed gently on the island. With the small soil slope where the old trees were located as the center point, the area with a diameter of about 200 meters began to sink at this time. The Earth's crust shook, causing the seawater around the island to surge crazily. Until this place finally sank into the earth, the seawater outside the island turned into a huge water column, pouring into this sunken space. After a long time, the sea water had filled this place and turned into a small lake within the island. No matter what you want, as long as you can pay us enough, then, whether it is good or bad, whether you were a good person or a bad person when you were alive, we will fulfill it for you. Looking at the lake and the island, Luochio said indifferently, "Right or wrong, since you have chosen to remain silent, I will give you this final grave." He had committed an indelible sin and also had the respect of everyone on the Bayou cruise ship. Ugliness and glory together. Your secret will be buried here, forever, customer. With that said, Luochio took out the old pocket watch and threw it into the small lake on the island. There seemed to be a slight sound of falling into the water. At the moment of falling into the water, the huge force broke the pocket watch's clasp, and the open pocket watch slowly sank in the water. On one side of it was an old yellowed and faded photo inlaid. On the other side was the time, which had stopped. October 2nd, 1987, 1900 hours, 2300 hours, 47:00. Chapter 591. The Golden Week had just passed, and people were once again involved in their busy lives. The society was still the society they were familiar with, and the boss of the club seemed to be the same as before, but what did it matter? The important thing was that before the Golden Week, he had been pardoned and released from the dim corner of the ceiling. Tainzi thought so. After a short holiday at the door, the rookie dared not touch the things in the cabinets, but at least sweeping the floor was okay, right? At this time, Tainzi was sweeping the floor while quietly observing the boss who was reading by the window. When he saw that the servant girl was finally going to make a new pot of black tea, Tainzi quickly followed her while sweeping the floor. The servant girl who was cutting lemon slices in the kitchen smiled. Tainzi, are you going to help me with the work here? No, I can't do this kind of thing. Tainzi shook his head and then looked at Yu Yi seriously. Miss Yu Yi, I have something to ask you today. Yu Yi showed a curious look and turned around. Oh? Tell me. I'll try my best to answer it for you. After all, responding to the request of the Black Soul Messenger is also one of my jobs. Here's the thing. Tianzi came forward and said mysteriously, Miss Yu Yi, do you know how to make a meat chicken? Meat chicken? Yu Yi was stunned and then shook her head. She opened her palm and a cooking book appeared in front of Tianzi. There are various ways to make chicken here. I'm not talking about this. Tianzi quickly shook his head. The meat chicken I'm talking about is the kind of code that can invade other people's computers. You're talking about the program virus? The servant girl opened her mouth slightly in surprise at this time. Tianzi nodded at this time. Here's the thing. After facing the wall again and again during this period of time, I finally thought of a shocking idea. Then you should tell the master directly. Yu Yi shook her head. Tianzi hurriedly said, Miss Yu Yi, I just wanted you to give me some advice. You know my master's intention the best. If Miss Yu Yi can say yes, then I won't lose face in front of the master, right? Of course. I'll be very grateful. What are you going to do? Tianzi sneakily took out a mobile phone at this time and quickly operated on the interface. Recently, I've been studying modern digital products. I've also started to dabble in C language, Java, and so on. Look, this is what I tinkered with during the holidays, but I'm not capable enough, so I can't do it well. Yi quickly looked at it a few times and then chuckled. It seems quite interesting, Tianzi. Yi, miss, do you agree to help? Tianzi was overjoyed. You have to extend your service by 50 years. Unexpectedly, the servant girl whispered with an angelic smile at this time. After all, you don't have any performance to deduct. Tianzi gritted his teeth. Deal. 50 years it is. Everything depends on you. Yi, miss. Whether or not I can make a comeback depends on this. 50 years of gambling. Speaking of which, from the initial 500 years, how many years had passed since then? Tianzi had subconsciously forgotten this sad story. There was a famous saying in this world by a certain bespectacled fried dough twist. How can you become strong if you don't recharge? F***CK. Even so, it can't be a full SSR set. It's simply blinding. Xiao Bao muttered, then quickly typed a string of 666 numbers in the game's chat channel. At this time, a teammate in the team chat channel immediately sent a message. Hey, Xiao Bao, don't look at other people's equipment. We're about to enter the storyline dungeon. Focus. Xiao Bao's ID was also Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao, don't worry. Definitely not a scam. ID dominating the sky paper tiger. Scam, you're famous for scamming. If it weren't for the lack of people this time, I wouldn't have teamed up with you. Xiao Bao, professional healer. Definitely not a scam. ID Tender Mimi. Prepare to teleport immediately. The last storyline dungeon in the Novice Village. After clearing it, you can enter a new map. For a civilian player like Xiao Bao, the rewards after completing this dungeon were very rich. He was very much looking forward to it. At this time, Xiao Bao rubbed his hands. Section Chief Qin hadn't come back yet. There was nothing to do today. Everything was ready. But at this time, the window next to him suddenly opened with a bang. Xiao Bao suddenly shivered. He saw a young face stretch in from the outside corridor. Xiao Bao? You're dead. You're slacking at work. Xiao Bao suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. So it's you, Officer Lin. You scare me to death. I was wondering who it was. Lin Feng just looked at Xiao Bao with a smirk, then smiled and said, Lunch, crayfish, okay. Xiao Bao helplessly shook his head, subconsciously looked at the computer interface. His teammates had all activated the teleportation. Only his character was still foolishly in the teleportation array. Of course, he had been kicked out of the team, and in the team chat channel that had not yet disappeared, there was naturally a series of abusive words. Xiao Bao felt that he really had to live up to the nickname of Scam God. In this recently popular large-scale fantasy RPG online game, Jade Fantasy. Officer Lin, what are you looking for me for? Xiao Bao asked weakly as he logged off. Well, there's a room outside, and the body of an old man living alone was found. I want you to go and see what's going on. Officer Lin shrugged. An old man living alone. I'm afraid it's the result of no one taking care of him. Sigh. Xiao Bao shook his head and stood up. Let's go, I'll prepare the tools. Dominating paper tiger. Shield. Put on a shield for me. Tender Mimi, no. The monsters are pestering me. Eat the red. Qin Xiu, come back. You are too forward. In the dungeon instance, the male knight character named Qin Xiu ignored it. He rushed into the monster group alone and killed in all directions. Under his terrifying operation skills, nearly 1/3 of the monsters have been annihilated in an instant. In addition to dominating Paper Tiger and Tender Mimi, the other two characters in the team were also caught in a hard battle on the other side at this time. They had no time to pay attention to him for the time being. But Qin Xiu's strength was too strong. Even after kicking away a priest, Xiao Bao, and not getting support, Qin Xiu still rushed straight to the boss's room. It took about 10 minutes for Qin Xiu to successfully kill the boss. Qin Xiu walked out with a victory reward, but at the same time, he received the removal of the friend relationship from dominating Paper Tiger and others in the team. ID Qin Xiu, what do you mean? Dominating Paper Tiger. Sorry, great God. We can't get along. Qin Xiu. Isn't the dungeon instance successful? Dominating Paper Tiger. Yes, you are amazing. You are awesome. You can clear this dungeon instance alone at level 20. But look back, how many times have we died? I actually used 2 bottles of resurrection potion in this novice village dungeon instance. If you were slower, everyone could save the potion. Qin Xiu, that kind of thing can be respawned in the future. Why bother? And your speed is too slow. Only after a few more battles like this can your skills improve. ID Nameless Wind. Sorry, I'm just a casual player. I don't plan to study so deeply. I just plan to play casually and make friends. I feel that our personalities don't match, so don't waste everyone's time. Anyway, it's just a temporary team. Adding friends is just for a little more experience gain. It doesn't matter if there's one more or one less. I don't want the reward. You can play by yourself. Qin Xiu. Dominating Paper Tiger. Let's part on good terms. Take care of yourself. If you are so unsociable, who can stand you? It's just that your skills are too poor. He originally wanted to type such a sentence, but the team chat channel was empty. He finally pressed the return button in front of the computer and cleared the words one by one because the team had been directly disbanded in this dungeon instance. Lan Xiu shook his head and rested his head on the pillow of the chair. The room was very small and dark. There were all kinds of food boxes, garbage, cigarette butts, and drink bottles all around. He didn't know how long it had been since this place was cleaned up. TSK. Boring people, whether in society or on the internet, are always afraid of outstanding people. Are they humbly united? Lan Xiu shook his head and glanced at the photo frame in front of the computer screen. Lan Xiu frowned and flipped the photo frame on the table forcefully. If I can live directly in it, what can I do? He looked at the picture on the screen obsessively. This knight character named Qin Xiu. This was not the first time he played this knight character. For those novices, it seemed impossible to clear the novice ultimate dungeon instance alone. But for him, it was too easy. At this moment, Lan Xiu's computer screen suddenly dimmed and a strange skull appeared. It was obviously a skull, but it had dense afro hair. Naturally, it was very strange, right? In the mouth of this skull, there was an envelope. Lan Xiu frowned. This situation, who put a chicken in my computer? Lan Xiu sneered and directly opened the envelope in the skull's mouth without minding. Text. Do you want to fulfill your wish? Are you willing to pay for your precious thing for this? What is it? Lan Xiu frowned subconsciously. Yen. Chapter 592. There was a knock on the door. Come in. Luochio responded from the study room. Yi walked in with a smile. Behind her, TNZ followed a little nervously, holding a laptop in his hands. Master, TNZ wants to show you some results. Miss Maid walked directly to the boss's chair and said with her head lowered. Oh, Luochio nodded with interest, then looked at TNZ and waved his hand. Sit down. No, I'll just stand. TNZ straightened his back quickly and quietly glanced at Miss Maid, then quickly said, In fact, Yi helped me this time. Without her rich knowledge, I'm afraid my idea can't be realized. So, the biggest credit goes to Yu Yi. Luocio looked at Yu Yi curiously. Miss Maid said reservedly, I just provided some technical possibilities. It's nothing. And this time, Taiyinzi's idea looks really interesting. If even you say so. Luocio smiled. Taiyinzi, then let me see your results. Taiyinzi hurriedly turned on the laptop in front of the boss, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He faced the screen to Luocio, cleared his throat, and said, Master, I've been studying some modern people's daily life and entertainment in my spare time recently. I've been inspired by a modern professional called Coder. I've named this plan God King. Isn't this the infinite flow? I also read novels when I was a child. The boss silently glanced at Taiyinzi. But forget it. After all, he was a Taoist from 500 years ago. It was good that he could accept this. Then, Taiyinzi said seriously, Master, Little Taoist feels that we need to have a high-end packaging. If we want to sell our products well, we need packaging and publicity. Only by expanding our popularity can we attract more customers. Seeing that Luocio didn't have any reaction and didn't intend to stop and listen, Taiyinzi emboldened himself. Master, I feel that our club's marketing method is too backward. To put it bluntly, the Black Soul Envoy was a salesman. Although this could ensure the accuracy of the transaction, wasn't this efficiency too slow? So, I think we need to expand a new channel. So this God King is your so-called packaging and publicity? Luocio narrowed his eyes. Taiyinzi nodded heavily. Master, we can't underestimate the modern people's receptivity. In this era where imagination and development are exploding, we can actually use a more straightforward and crude method to establish contact with our customers. Luocio suddenly glanced at Yu Yi. His eyes showed more and more interest. He changed his sitting position and reached out to fiddle with Taiyinzi's laptop. Taiyinzi's body was almost plastered to the desk. He bent over and said, Master, you see, in this era, humans can't leave the internet. From 80 to 3 years old, all of them can access the huge internet. This is our best channel. This screen is actually modified from 10 white cards, and the processor inside is a CPU modified from 8 black cards. Of course, this technology is all thanks to Miss Yu Yi. I reckon that even if I had another few hundred years, I wouldn't be able to do it. After the modification, this laptop can face 8 customers at the same time. Currently, it can support the operation of 8 threads. If it is mass-produced and equipped to be used by Black Soul Envoys, with our Black Soul power as the starting power, Black Soul Envoys can use the internet to find a large number of customers without leaving the house. When Luocio heard this, he asked curiously, through this mode, the Black Soul power will be weakened to a certain extent, right? Taiyinzi said proudly at this time, Master, I've seriously considered this problem. You see, although the Black Soul power has become scattered due to continuous extension, it may even weaken to a dispensable state. But because of this, those customers who can be found, don't they prove that they have the most urgent needs? The stronger the need, the more it can attract us. If he is able to attract the power of the Onyx Soul, even when he is in a dispensable state, then this customer is a very good customer. Of course, it was also because of this master's character that Taiyinzi finally made such a consideration. Obviously, the master didn't care much about ordinary customers. Then, under the premise of not knowing the master's thoughts, this kind of multi-threaded operation was even more difficult to choose. Taiyinzi didn't dare to say this out. It has sounded a bit interesting. Luocio nodded and suddenly asked, Have you tested it? Taiyinzi quickly said, Master, I have randomly sent out 100 invitation letters through this system, and one of them has already received a response. Oh, so fast. Boss Luo nodded. Yu Yi smiled and said, Master, after receiving the first response, Taiyinzi couldn't wait to ask for your instructions. It would have been more appropriate to talk about it first. It's fine, Luocio smiled, but if we let the customer wait for a long time, that's not good. Online chat transactions. That's online signing, right? Interesting. Let me do the first order. The boss put his hands on the keyboard. After clicking on the yes on the screen, nothing happened. Lan Xiao frowned again. It was not good to let the computer be in such a state of crash. He waited for a while. There was just a strange feeling in his heart that wanted to wait like this. He did not know what he was expecting. Lan Xiao laughed at himself and shook his head. Just as he was about to unplug the network cable and power, there was finally a change on the screen. Text. Sorry for the long wait, dear customer. You're online? Lan Xiao was stunned. After thinking for a while, he typed on the keyboard. Who are you? Why did you hack into my computer? Infinite flow? What kind of stupid thing is this? Boring. Text and then how about this? After this text appeared, Lan Xiao's expression changed from surprise to horror. Because he clearly saw the computer's network cable being automatically pulled out, and even the power cord was automatically pulled out. The two wires seemed to have a life at this moment, stopping in the air, but the computer was still in a state of startup. Lan Xiao's heart beat violently. He calmed down, and after tapping on the keyboard a few times with his fingers, he finally succeeded in typing what he wanted to say. Are you really the Lord God? Text. It can be considered the name of this system. Lan Xiao system? Text. To a certain extent. Lan Xiao swallowed his saliva. What's next? The unfolding of the Lord God's world? Mission release? Text. No. This is just a trading platform. Lan Xiao frowned. That's the exchange system, right? What do I buy? Text. What's important is what you want, customer. Lan Xiao thought for a while. In other words, if I make a request, you'll quote a price? As long as I can afford it, I can buy anything? Text. I've already hinted at the beginning, customer. Also, money doesn't count. Lan Xiao, my precious everything. But this kind of strange power seems to be understandable. I roughly understand what this trading model is. Text. So, customer, what do you want to buy? Lan Xiao was silent for a while and silently typed what he wanted on the screen. I don't want to stay in this world anymore. Let me enter the game and become a character inside. Text. Which game? Lan Xiao. Jade Fantasy. Text. I understand. Customer, you want to develop the game in another world, right? But unfortunately, I'm afraid you can't afford such a price. However, if you just want to enter the world of this game, it's not a problem. Lan Xiao, be careful. Text. Abandon your current body. Your soul will enter the game and become a character inside. Of course, you will have everything that your current character has. The texture is no different from reality. However, all the restrictions on players in the game are also effective on you. In addition, when you die more than 3 times, your soul will leave and then belong to us. Lan Xiao, 3 times. Deal. Text. Then, I wish you a happy game. After simply pressing the Enter key, Luochio's hands left the keyboard. At this time, Tianzi looked at his master as if he was holding his throat, waiting for the result of his master's experience. But the boss did not speak for a long time. Tianzi hesitated and said, Master, this system? Well, Luochio thought for a while. It's okay. To a certain extent, it's similar to the function of the critical door. It's even suspected of being repeated. Although that was what he said, Boss Luo had not even opened a door so far. The door was still quietly closed there. Of course, this was only his personal consideration. But this did not hinder his mood to discuss this plan with Tianzi. Then, Tianzi suddenly showed a disappointed look. But Luochio suddenly smiled at this time and said, if it's used as a targeted promotion of a certain product, the effect should be good. Master, you mean? Tianzi asked, puzzled. Luochio said, there should be a lot of people like Lan Xiao who yearn for the game world more than the real world, right? I can't always maintain this minimum transaction volume like this. Just treat it as an investment. It seems good to find a long-term and stable source of income. If there was a long-term and stable source of income on one hand, and he could continue his daily interests on the other, it would be beneficial for Boss Luo if both sides did not delay. A businessman who did not have several different investment projects. Master is wise, Tianzi said quickly. Boss Luo thought about something at this moment and suddenly said, Yi, I'll have to trouble you to assist Tianzi and perfect this God King. Miss Maid smiled slightly and said, Master, In order not to affect the daily service, can you call Adam over to be responsible for the follow-up development? Of course, you will continue to follow up. You can arrange this kind of small matter. Luocio nodded and suddenly looked at Tianzi. By the way, Tianzi, your opening speech is not grounded. Change it. Tianzi hurriedly said, Master, please enlighten me. Boss Luo said, Do you want to live a real life? Tianzi. The rookie was stunned for a moment. He suddenly felt like he had found a confidant.